Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto bastard son of Minato and Kushina. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. After almost 6 years after the Kyuubi's attack, Konoha's morale had recovered and its productivity increased very well. More buildings and areas that were devastated during the Kyuubi's violent attack were reconstructed or reformed. Markets were now booming, as it seemed as though war and disaster were slowly becoming a distant memory. Yes, overall Konoha improved greatly. So where were we? Oh yeah, so point my is, that those disdainful, filthy rascals are ruining entire marketplace. You know well, Hokage-sama, that to merchants like us marketplace is a temple, where we receive our sacred customers. But those vagabonds are keeping on threatening and stealing and molesting. Hitaki Kakashi wondered how long had it been since the merchantess started to complain about few muggers in marketplace. He glanced at the clock upon the wall. Exactly 43 minutes and 56 seconds. The silver-haired Anbu pressed an impulse to send applause at Yondaimi's patience. At last, the blonde Hokage cut the constantly gossiping woman short and nodded, hardly keeping his usual gentle smile. Alright, Aiko-san. My guards will put them under arrest soon. Then I'm so relieved, Hokage-sama. As I said while ago, I'm a woman living alone with my growing son and my shop is the only way to. Kakashi closed his both eyes, waiting until the woman's last blabs ends. Minutes later, finally, glad sound of her leaving the office echoed. Man, enough of women and their gossips for a day. RRRRRRRGH. As soon as the door closed, Minato put his pen down and let out an agonized scream before collapsing onto his desk exhaustedly. Kakashi nodded sympathetically. You've earned my respect even more now, sensei. Don't get cute with me, Kakashi. Why the hell can't they just go to police station for such trifle matters? I mean my title looks so silly now. Not really. Grinning behind his mask, Kakashi counted how many women with trifle matters had visited Yondaimi's office today. 5 or 6. Women in their 20s or 30s, all of them wearing their best clothes. The fact that Hokage is a married man and his wife is alive didn't seem to matter to those fangirls. Fangirls. You can't either kill them or appreciate them. Half was former's fault, one could say. Rumor of Namikaze marriage straining was secretly spreading among citizens especially among women. Minato and Kushina never showed a hint of it in public, but rumor has it always based on a true rumor. These days Minato rarely went back to his mansion to spend his time with his wife and children. He mostly stayed in his office, whether there are plenty of paperworks or not, ever since his third daughter's born. 3 daughters all in all. The parents' relationship was growing cold nowadays. And Kakashi couldn't blame either of them. He knew well how eagerly his sensei had been desiring for a son. Yeah, a son. A son that resembles his proud father. A son who can protect his mother and sisters when in absence of father. By the way, sensei. Yes? What? The soaked-out Hokage answered in fatigued voice. Academy will start by next week. The young Anbu paused for a moment. Minami-chan is to enter as well, and Kushina-sama is expressing worry. Minato slowly straightened up at this. What worry? His deep ocean eyes were starting to gleam with a sickness. About Minami-chan's training. Training? Yes, sensei. Kushina-sama seemed to can't find a right reason why Minami-chan is having slow progress. This wasn't just Kushina alone's dilemma. Everyone acquainted with Namikaze family was being rather stunned at the girl's poor improvement in ninja training even with Kyuubi's vast power. The girl almost looked like a plain child with poor chakra. And no one could detect out a right reason for that. Maybe Jiraiya the super pervert toad sage could help. But for 6 years he hadn't once come to visit and no one knew of his whereabouts. I can't make a prodigy out of a natural failure. Snorted the Yondaime. Kakashi frowned at his sensei's rather Uchiha-ish manner of speaking. And he was speaking of his own daughter. Natural failure? Is Jinchuriki a natural failure? Namikaze Minato was a last person to be stereotyped with Jinchurikis, since his own wife's once a Jinchuriki, as well as their firsts now. So what's this sarcasm all about? Sensei. Heaving a sigh, Kakashi disengaged his crossed arms. Minato looked up at him with a bored expression upon his handsome face. Don't, Kakashi. I know what you're gonna say. Alright, but you're children. Damn, I don't care about girls, okay? Kakashi closed his mouth at this sudden outburst. Coal Eye registered with a shock at the outrageous glitters in Sapphire eyes. Silence resumed, then Minato heaved a sigh. Sorry, Kakashi. It's okay. The silver-haired Anbu sighed, too. I understand your feeling. Indeed he did. How long had this man been waiting for a son? How impatiently had he waited to hear Nurse speaking, "Congratulations, it's a boy." All in vain, All in vain. Minato moved his gaze to outside the vast window, his eyes dreamy with melancholy thoughts as a certain image wandered inside his head. Image of a little boy popping around the yard of his very mansion, pulling pranks upon his siblings, training with trees, and running with healthy little legs, to be hugged by his dad. Image of a boy who's just a clone of his father. Suddenly blue eyes widened, as if an abrupt shock from sudden realization paralleled through his boiling head. Sensei, are you okay? I'm fine. Hardly managing a reply, Minato shook his head to remove the useless contemplation. 6 years. It had been 6 years. Uchiha District. Then look for a man. Look out for a most powerful man among your group. Once you found him, cling on to him, earn his favor, seduce him. Only then you'll be spared, you wretched woman. Itachi, where are you going? Stopping his scarred hands from cleansing his sandal, Uchiha Itachi cocked his head backward. I have a mission. Oh, Makoto smiled clumsily. So, you won't be back tonight? I'm not sure. Maybe not. Ah, okay. And you? Letting one of his rare smile to hang upon his lips, he questioned. Where are you going, with such preppy outfit? Ah, the Uchiha female blushed little. I'm going to visit Namikaze Mansion, to see Kushina-chan. How'd I look? That's nice. But I think your skirt is too short. Her flush deepened. You think so? Yeah, a bit. Then putting his shoes onto his feet, Itachi stood up. Bye, Okawa-san. See you later. Itachi. Heck. Itachi stopped his paces at this, squeezing his eyes shut. He knew that voice. He knew that tone. Without looking back he responded. Yes? Are you sure? You have nothing to tell me? Her voice was meek yet sounded courageous. No, Okawa-san. His voice was dark and blunt. Alright. Smiling again, she cheerfully waved her hand. Bye, see you later. Makoto watched her eldest son going away with her hands held together. Soon his slim figure faded away. She slowly sank on the floorboard, covering her face with hands to hide sobs. Itachi's relationship with his family and clan was rapidly turning cold these days. And aside from callous, brusque remarks he sometimes spits out, no one knew what the hell's going on in the young Anbu captain's head. But Uchiha Makoto was his mother. She was a mother. Though she also was incapable of grabbing what's going on with her son, she was his mother. A mother can feel it when something's happening with her children, no matter how much they try to hide it. Every time she looked into his dark gray eyes. Every moment he declined to join clan conference. Her doubt grew larger and larger by each day. Even thought she wasn't sure of it. The boy loved his village, even more than his own family and clan. No one in their clan would agree with her, but she knew it. She just knew it. She could feel his love, the great love of the Uchiha prodigy toward his homeland. She knew it. Uchiha clan's plan of revolt was drastic. Makoto knew well that if they attack Konoha, the resulting civil war will weaken the village in all aspects, despite the result of coup d'état. This sign of weakness will entice other countries to take advantage and invade Konoha, with the conflict eventually escalating into another shinobi world war. A hopeless, blinded scheme which will eventually condemn them forever. Especially since Yondaime lived, there's only faint chance of success. Sniffling, she wiped her tears with a hand. Don't cry, she told herself. She needed to be strong. Though she didn't exactly know what's going on around her son, she had few doubts, and she had to prepare for any future disaster. A disaster like a failure of their revolt which will lead entire clan to be executed. Or betrayal of Itachi which also will lead entire clan to be executed. Whatever, she had to be strong, so that she'd be able to protect her children. And to protect her children, she needed a man. And the man wasn't her husband. Fugaku was a head of Uchiha clan, but he's a head of Uchiha's only. She needed more powerful man. Most powerful man in whole Konoha. There's only one man who could help her. The strongest man of Konohagakure. The most powerful, respected man among all, who could condemn whole Uchihas just by saying one word. But will he take a pity at the begging of one Uchiha female, the very wife of Trader's leader? He's known to be kind and generous, yet behind the gentle mask he hid most deadly nature. He will never spare anyone who rises against him. But Kushina was too proud to talk about her straining marriage relationship even to her best friend, but many were aware of it. And girls knew girls. Upon every visit Makoto could see an obvious anguish in her friend's beautiful violet eyes. Standing up, Makoto arranged her short skirt. If only I can earn a bit of favor from him. A mother's love often surpasses her love for others, even for her husband. And she'd do anything to save her children, even if it means a cruel betrayal to her own husband and childhood friend. She'll visit Kushina and Namikaze children. Then on her way back, she'll drop by Hokage's office. Makoto swallowed her guilt when a red-haired beauty hugged her and kissed onto her cheek. Makoto, actually I wasn't expecting you today. Am I interrupting you? Returning the kiss, the Uchiha woman asked rather timidly. Kushina blushed. No, not really. But, she then smiled. My husband got off work early today, and we're going to. The raven-haired woman felt her heart starting thumping wildly when she saw a handsome blonde approaching them. What the heck, why is he joining his family today, leaving so many other days? Hokage-sama. She bowed politely, scolding herself for damn clumsiness. Good evening, Makoto-san. The man smiled at her. How are you? And your family? They're doing fine, thanks. Maybe I should just leave then? Kushina was about to say something but was cut short by her husband. I think not. We're just about to have a dinner, why don't you join us? Makoto blushed at this, though she was well aware that it's just from his kindness. Thank you for your kindness, but... She glanced at Kushina. Kushina smiled again. Oh yeah, come. Fueling her friend's hand, Kushina cheerfully exclaimed. I'll let you know what Uzumaki-style ramen is. Sitting on her offered chair, Makoto quickly scrutinized this family. Kushina was sitting opposite to her, and beside her was 4-year-old Kasumi, whose blue eyes twinkled as she brushed her red hair off to eat ramen more comfortably. Aika the youngest, who was the only one with her father's golden hair, might be inside her room sleeping since she's still a toddler. Minami the eldest, the container of Kyuubi no Kitsune, the hero of Konohagakure where is she? Gare. Ah! Almost springing up, Makoto screamed when another red-haired girl with violet eyes suddenly emerged between tablecloth, putting her head onto Uchiha's laps. The girl giggled happily when she saw an obvious effect of her prank. Yee-hee-hee-hee. Minami-chan. Kushina chided. You shouldn't frighten our visitor like that. Sorry, Ka-san. Still giggling, Minami rushed back to her seat. Just then Minato entered the kitchen. Geez. What's the scream while ago? Oh, it's nothing. Minami-chan just pulled one of her pranks upon my friend. Makoto felt bit stunned when she noticed how Minami's behavior changed after the very moment her father appeared. The girl stopped her playful evil laughter immediately and began to study her father's face, rather pitifully. The raven threw a quick glance upon Kasumi. Well, the younger girl was too absorbed with her ramen. Well, with a slight frown, Yondaime took his seat, which was middle of the table, then looked at the Uchiha with a smile. Are you okay, Makoto-san? I'm fine. She quickly smiled back, putting a humor. My, she's just like her mother. The dinner started, with Kushina's special Uzumaki-style ramen. Minami and Kasumi gobbled down the ramen faster than one could blink, while Minato and Kushina, while eating more civilized, were only slightly slower in their decimation of the meal. Only Makoto ate slower, savoring each bite before swallowing it. They looked peaceful, thought the brooding Uchiha. They looked like a perfect family, with the parents exchanging normal conversations while eating, and their daughters emptying third bowls of ramen each. Had she took it wrong? Or, by the way, Makoto immediately broke from her reverie when Yondaime turned to her. Trying hard to press her blush, she swallowed a chunk of noodles inside her mouth. Yes, Hokage-sama? Your younger son is also entering academy this year, isn't he? Yeah, he is. He's very excited. Without a second thought, she added hastily. He's always saying he'll be a great guardian of Konoha one day. Then she immediately regretted saying it. Cute boy. I'm sure of it, commented Kushina, totally ignorant of anything. Makoto pressed an urge to squirm, and bit her own tongue, her face heating up as she felt Sapphire gaze piercing her. Hell no, she gulped. He can't notice anything. No, he shouldn't. Good that you got such brilliant sons. Fortunately, his voice sounded affable enough to wash away her anxiety. Your eldest is a current Anbu captain, right? At such a young age. Kasumi perked up at this and clung to her mother. Okawa-san, what is Anbu captain? Is it cool? Can I do it? Of course you can, my dear, one day, if you try hard. You can't because I'll be a captain. Minami grinned evilly at her sister. Kasumi scowled. No way I'll be a captain. And you'll be my subordinate. What, do you think it's really possible? Girls. The girls immediately fell silent when their father spoke up in calm tone. Adults are talking. Most children are so noisy. Makoto wondered why the redhead's comment was sounding like a plead, rather than an excuse. Minato looked at the raven woman again. Yeah, some. How about your children? Actually, Itachi is always quiet underscore. She noticed a flush emerging upon Kushina's face, and again, wondered what has pissed her off. He doesn't talk about himself that much. Sasuke's just like a child in his age, but his brothers sometimes make me anxious. Smiling sadly, she picked up her chopstick and poked at the noodles. He nodded. You shouldn't worry much. Males often go into their shells without a hint. Once you leave them alone and they'll naturally come out soon. This time both Makoto and Kushina tilted their heads. Oh, and it was a funny scene, to Yondaimi's eyes. After the dinner's done, and after helping Kushina washing dishes, Makoto put out a plastic bag she'd brought along with her. Here, Minami-sama. With an affable smile she handed a small box to the girl. It's my gift for your academy. Minami's eyes widened, and they became wider as she tore the wrapped paper and opened the box. Wow. Kushina thankfully looked at her friend. Wow, special made silver shurikens. But aren't they too expensive underscore? It's okay. I bought some for Sasuke too. Rather a cheap gift for Konoha's hero. Thank you, Makoto-chan. You're so sweet. The two young women exchanged kisses. The Hokage nodded at the Uchiha. That's very nice of you, Makoto-san. As much as your company's been pleasant. Makoto blushed again, hesitating for a while before taking out another box from her bag. This time it wasn't wrapped, it was a long wooden box with some brand mark upon it. Kushina tilted her head at this. What's that? Actually. Gulping, Makoto stared at her friend, then at Hokage, then at friend again. This is a herb tea. I just thought you'd like to serve this to your husband. I mean, since he works so much, this tea will help him ease his fatigue. She blushed again. Oh, sapphire eyes sparkled gently. I'm sure it will. My, soon I'll have to visit your house with presents. Laughing, Kushina took the wooden box. Thank you for your gifts and company, Makoto-chan. Take care, Makoto-san. Thanks for the superb dinner. Goodbye, Kushina-chan. Goodbye, Hokage-sama. Then she waved at the girls. Goodbye, girls. Bye, Oba-chan. The red-haired girls chorused together. Soon Makoto left, biting goodbyes. A strange silence fell into the mansion then, except the sound of Minami boasting her gift to her sister who was boiling with jealousy. A kind friend, isn't she? Kushina accosted her silent husband, eager to have some talk. Good woman, replied the man dryly. With her two sons. Kushina's red eyebrows furrowed at this, but she quickly passed it away. Minato-kun, we need to talk about Minami's training. Do you know when Jiraiya-sama will be coming? Ero-sensei? His voice turned sarcastic. What can he do for her? What do you mean? We need him to see what's wrong with Minami-chan. She can't take. He took the herb tea from her hand. There's nothing to see. When there's no defect in trainer, all we can do is to blame the trainee. Kushina began to feel her ire rising, but again, passed it away. Don't speak like that. She's still young, and what if there's any problem upon sealing? I told you before, and I tell you again. Sealing was perfect. But, enough of your worries. Minato turned away. Now put the girls to beds and sleep yourself. I still have so much to do. Minato underscore. I said, go sleep. Kushina glared at her husband's back, her violet eyes flashing with an anger. I'm not a piece of meat you can command upon. Her tone rose as she continued. I'm not one of your subordinates. I'm your wife. The girls now stopped chattering and helplessly watched their parents. Mom and Dad were about to start a quarrel again. Minato slowly turned back and stared down at his wife. Tensed silence flew for seconds before he. Yes, my wife. My wife. All of a sudden he slammed his fist into the wall, causing the redhead to flinch with a shock. her eyeballs nearly popping out from their sockets. Mina-kun. She whimpered when he roughly clutched her one shoulder and looked into her eyes with his own blazing ones. And as a wife, I want you to follow your husband's words without whining. Is that clear? Yes. Voice shaking with a terror, she quickly nodded. Good, he let go of her. Excuse me. Then he stormed away, heading to his study. Her body still shaking, Kushina plunked down on the floor, her eyes still wide with a previous shock. She blankly stared at the cracked wall before bursting into tears. Ka-san. Oh Ka-san. It took a quite while for her to realize that Minami and Kasumi were sobbing too, clinging onto her. Secret base chamber of Root. A little boy with short black hair and ink eyes sat leaning against the wall. In his one hand was a bundle of papers, while other hand was holding a pencil. His usually emotionless eyes were beaming for the first time of the day as he pressed his pencil onto white sheet and began to. You're making a stupid drawing again. Dropping his pencil, the black-haired boy looked up, soon to heave a sigh of relief, calling his codename Naruto. Spiky golden-haired boy glared down at the drawings, his cold sapphire eyes gleaming with disdain. Strange hobby you got, nothing to help. Shin said I have a talent. You take his words seriously? He's just an idiot, and you're a blunt idiot. Loud, rather unfitting voice for atmosphere of future Root members echoed right behind them. Sai perked up and nodded at the gray-haired boy, allowing a small smile to appear upon his pale lips. Hey. I left you for a while and now you're talking behind my back, calling me an idiot. Which is true. Naruto, you're a badass. Blonde boy looked away, listening Shin's hurted complaints with apathy and calmly waiting until the complaints completely died away. Our regulation will be held soon. The blonde spat with fed-up tone. We need to train, instead of going into stupid hobby. You'll get into trouble for that. You don't have to work your ass off, brother. Crossing his arms, Shin snorted. Naruto frowned at him. And to be beaten to a pulp again? And I'm not your brother. Don't remind of me that horrible night. And we all are brothers. So you know how it's going to be? Asked the black-haired one. The blonde frowned again. How'd I know? You, Shin? Nope. Answered the gray-haired Anbu, trying to headlock the golden-haired brooder. All I know is that we're to combat each other. Fuck, let go of me right now, you total moron underscore. Don't call me underscore. He's a pistol. Shin muttered, watching the blonde going away. Sai picked up his pencil again. Shin, huh? What? Where did he get such face? Who? That jackass? Yeah. Shin dropped his jaw, before bursting into laughter. Ho. So you're jealous or something? Black eyes glared up at him. I don't understand what you mean. Anyway, I just occasionally heard our leader talking about his look with somebody. Rolling his eyes, Shin scratched his chin. So what? Are you saying Leader Sama is a pedo or something? What's pedo? Nothing. Anyway, I'm sure that. I just got this feeling. Fixing his gaze onto paper sheet again, Sai mumbled. That our leader doesn't like his face. Gray eyebrows twitched at this. And the reason? I don't know. I just feel that. In a nondescript bunk inside one of Root's secret chambers, Naruto opened his eyes, feeling miserable. It was still very dark and other boys were sleeping soundly, as they were supposed to. It was usual for him. He often found himself waking up in middle of the night feeling dismal. His body felt heavy, as if it had fallen into a muddy lake and had to drag himself and his burdensome soaked clothes out of it. His head was dizzy and the urge to throw up was getting more powerful. Forcing back his nausea, the blonde climbed down from the bunk, the old wooden posts creaking under the shifts of his weight. Oi! Somebody hissed, a pair of obscured eyes sending him a glare in the darkness. It was one of the brown-haired twins. Naruto ignored him completely and opened the door of chamber, slamming it behind him. The sleep-deprived and annoyed orphans began to exchange whispers then. Where is he going? He wants to train more, no doubt. Total weirdo. Why he's doing it, I don't know, maybe he wants to be praised by Leader Sama. The landscape outside was a typical sight, congealed earth and leaves against the pale moonlight. Naruto exhaled, billows of cold air emanating from his mouth as he gathered few pebbles. Then pushing chakra into his legs, he sprung up and took flight. Using pebbles instead of shurikens, he narrowed his eyes and threw them into the air. The stones cut through the air like sharp knives, striking the targeted treetops. The blonde felt his nausea slowly vanish as he kept on training. It had always been like that. During the day their leader trained them till all of them were on the brink of throwing up. Naruto suffered the same nausea the other orphans felt, but not for the same reason. In fact, it was the exact opposite reason. He felt sick when he was done training just like other kids. After being dismissed, all of the orphans rushed back to their chamber to get some much-needed rest. All of them except for one. Naruto stayed outside, going over that day's exercise, time and time again. Only then he felt at ease, only then did the sickness ebb away. He couldn't figure out the reason for it. He just knew that he had to do much more training than the others in order to prevent his annoying malaise. About an hour later, Naruto went back to chamber, sweaty and panting but satisfied. He picked up one of the towels piled at the corner and wiped his face. "Oi, why aren't you sleeping?" The blonde immediately frowned when Shin climbed down from his own bunk and approached him. The gray-haired boy shrugged, then punched the blonde's shoulder lightly. "Are you okay?" Sapphire eyes glared at him, flashing in the dark. "What? You're working like a madman, little brother. I'm worried about your condition. Worry about yourself. And stop calling me that." "Why? Leader Sama said we all are brothers, idiot. Cripes, just go sleep. Our regulation starts tomorrow. Shush. The other boys hissed angrily at the two. Rolling his eyes, Shin gave them the thumbs up before facing the blonde again. "No matter what, you're my brother." The brooding blonde ignored the idiot's words and climbed back to his own bunk. There were only 2 weeks left until the day of Konohagakure's biggest festival, which celebrated and remembered the day of the Kyuubi no Yoko's defeat, bested by none other than their beloved Yondaime with the help from his own daughter, Namikaze Minami, Konoha's little heroine. In only a fortnight, the 6th anniversary of the Kyuubi's defeat would take place. The markets were already blooming, people crammed all around them, but no shops were as populated as the latest dress shops. Colorful and luxuriously embroidered kimonos were displayed at every shop window, attracting the eyes of women of all ages. However, ironically enough, such shops held more men than women, since it was a tradition for the husbands, fathers, and brothers to buy the festive garments for their female relatives. Uchiha Makoto skid to a halt in front of one of the dress shops on her way back from grocery shopping. For a moment, her black eyes shimmered with excitement at the sight of such magnificent dresses, only to drop in a sad manner an instant later. People are ignorant, thought Makoto as she gave out a sigh. She wondered whether the festival would actually be held that year. Her husband and leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku, was planning to strike on that very same day of festival, the only day when everyone, including the Hokage himself, would take a step back from their duties and relax in order to enjoy the celebration. No way. Yondaime wasn't the sort of man who would ever lower his guard. The Uchiha were blind. 2 weeks. She only had 2 weeks to stop everything. No, it could be even less, if Itachi. "Ah, Hokage-sama, it's an honor to have your visit my humble shop." Makoto turned around quickly, hearing the fangirl screams of the young women in the street. "Look, it's Hokage-sama. Gya, goodness, it's true. Wow, so he's buying kimonos for his wife and daughters? He's such a family-oriented man. Ah, it seems like the rumor were wrong. Arg, I wish I were his wife." The Uchiha female began to feel her heart thumping wildly once again at the sight of the spiky golden head of Yondaime. He exchanged a few words with the old shopkeeper before entering the dress shop. The 2 Anbu guards were having a hard time keeping the drooling women at bay, lest they flooded into the shop. Makoto arranged her outfit hastily, brushing her long hair with fingers, and finally feigning a calm smile, she made her way through the wave of people and walked past the sweating Anbus. One Anbu glanced at her, and noticing who she was, he simply nodded respectfully before concentrating on his job again. "So you want me to make 3 special kimonos, Hokage-sama?" 4, actually, including one for a toddler. "Ah, forgive me for my stupid amnesia, Hokage-sama. That's okay. How many days would it take?" Since it's 1 for an adults and 3 for the little ones." "Good morning, Hokage-sama." The 2 men turned around to look at the source of the interruption. The shopkeeper blinked while Minato smiled. "Hello, Makoto-san. It's good to see you again." Smiling back shyly, Makoto asked, "You're ordering kimonos for Kushina-chan and the girls?" "Yes, I guess so," he chuckled good-humoredly. "'Tis one of the things men should do. How about you, Makoto-san? Have you come to pick out your own kimono? Frankly, yes. She then blushed. My husband doesn't really like to pick up women's stuff. Sapphire eyes sparkled with a strange light at this. Women's stuff? Seriously? Yes. Why am I damn stammering? Scolding herself, Makoto nodded, her cheeks bright red. She shouldn't have given him such a stupid explanation. Even a kid would know that she was lying. Poor Fugaku. To be ratted out by his own wife. Fortunately, the shopkeeper cut into the conversation. Oh, so that's why. I just presumed that all Uchiha would get their outfits from their exclusive tailors. Some of us, but not all, she answered quickly, carefully studying the Hokage's face. Minato gave the raven-haired woman a brief piercing look, before bursting out laughing. I wasn't aware that Fugaku-san was such a conservative man. He need to be taught lessons. Thank goodness. So he wasn't suspicious of anything? The shopkeeper grinned at her, too. It's all right, lady. My shop is one of the best. I'll make a magnificent one for you. Yeah, you don't have to be embarrassed. I'm sure that this shop is fit for a beautiful woman such as yourself. The blonde chuckled again. Makoto's flush deepened at the compliment. Although it was ridiculous, her heart began thumping at a wilder pace. Does he really mean that? She then felt an abrupt urge to slap her own face. She was acting like a stupid teenage, awestruck girl. Thank you, but maybe I'll come back another time. She mumbled in a daze as she spun on her heels, feeling like an idiot. Makoto-san. She halted at the Hokage's grim voice, nearly gasping. Has he? Gulping, she turned around slowly. Yes, Hokage-sama. And that time, she did gasp. Oh, blast it. There was something behind those sapphire eyes. Her dark eyes began to well up in fear as he slowly strode towards her, his eyes fixed on her own. She gulped, feeling the blood rush through her body. I'm doomed. I'm damned. He noticed, he knows. She suppressed a wince. This man's deadly. Of course, he's deadly. What would you expect from Yondaime? Uchiha Makoto was just about a second away from bursting into tears when Yondaime handed her something. You forgot your things. Blinking vacantly, Makoto stared at her grocery bag, the stream of thoughts in her head skidding to a halt for a brief instant. It took her a few seconds to gather herself. She then smiled gratefully at him. Oh, thank you, Hokage-sama. His smile was as kind and as pleasant as always. You're welcome. See you soon, Makoto-san. After the embarrassed raven-haired woman left, or more like fled from the shop, Minato fell silent, his deep blue eyes pensive. Suddenly, his previously warm and big smile turned small and sarcastic. Silly Uchiha girl. Trying to play a game with him, huh? Hokage-sama? I think they'll be ready in a week. Ah, fine, then. I'll come back next week. Thank you for your visit, Hokage-sama. I'm always at your service. The boys were set in groups and had senior root members supervising them. Brows knit in his trademark frown, Naruto glared at his adversary, who looked extremely pale that day. It was one of the brown-haired twins _ the younger one, codename K. Even though he was an inch taller than Naruto, he seemed to have shrunk, looking much smaller than he was. He was scared, no doubt. Go! The supervisors shouted. The boys launched their attacks at each other, the sound of clashing metal resonating throughout the ground. Naruto ducked under K's swing and gave him a swift, harsh uppercut to the chin. The brown-haired boy grunted and flew back several meters, landing hard on the grass, unmoving. Naruto frowned again. That one was pathetic. He'd rather have an older one as his rival. On your feet. One of the supervisors yelled at the hapless twin. Don't give up unless your heart stops. He was bleeding from his mouth, and coughing helplessly. K slowly stood on his feet, swinging his blade. He then rushed at the blonde. Naruto intercepted him before he could strike. He went down onto his hands, and powered his right foot into K's stomach, knocking the air out of the twin's lungs and slamming him into a tree. The entire combat had taken less than 3 minutes. Bubbles of blood oozed between K's lips as he coughed painfully. Choking him hard against the tree, Naruto glanced up at the supervisors. Kill him, ordered one of them. Now, a look of wild disbelief flashed the blonde's eyes before he schooled his features into a blank mask. Horror crept up upon Shin's face as he watched his adversary fall limply to the ground, the blade sliding out from the fatal wound he had delivered to the chest. Shin stared up the supervisor. He nodded approvingly at him. Gulping, Shin turned to search for Sai and Naruto. Sai seemed to have just finished off his adversary. The black-haired boy dropped his head for quite briefly before slowly looking back at him, his eyes blank. Brothers. The leader had told them to think of each other as brothers. And now they were being ordered to kill each other. Something was wrong. Something was so terribly wrong. A terrified scream pierced the air, causing all boys to flinch from its intensity. The ear-splitting yell came from the youngest of the brown-haired twins. A certain blonde was just about to stab his chest. Shin quickly looked around, noticing Kenji. The eldest's knuckles widened, and his tanned face turned as pale as Sai's at the scene before him. Seeing that, the gray-haired boy shouted at the blonde without a second thought. Naruto. Naruto stopped his movements momentarily before frowning again. Squeezing his eyes shut, he stabbed the pathetic brown-haired boy's chest with his blade. Shin clenched his fists, sweats pooling into his palms. The number of boys had already decreased by half. All of them lay slumped on the bunkers, muscles aching and their breath-starved lungs wheezing. But the physical damage was laughable compared to the mental trauma they had gone through that day. Currently, everyone was avoiding each other's eyes. No one spoke or shared a word. No one slipped into another one's bed to share the warmth and have a chat. Tomorrow they would be killing each other again. And no one wanted to kill each other. Not really. You killed him. Despite the exhaustion, every head turned at the accusation. Naruto emptied his last glass of water before turning to Kenji. Blue eyes sparkled coldly. You killed your match too, he retorted bluntly. The boy said nothing for a while. He stared angrily at Naruto, who simply gave him a bored and cold look. He was the only family I had left. He hissed. Cold blue eyes twitched. He died because he was scum who allowed his emotions to get in the way. A malicious flash tore across the brown orbs. I hate you. Naruto turned away. Sai looked up when Shin jumped down from the upper bunk and approached to the blonde. Naruto. The blonde merely arranged his sheet. Naruto. Are you okay? Damn. Naruto whipped his head around. Shin flinched subconsciously at the blazing expression on the younger boy's face. Why the heck won't you leave me alone? Snarled the blonde. Why won't you just worry about yourself? Do you think I'm a pathetic weakling, too? Don't fight, please. A teary voice interrupted them. It was from one of the smaller boys. Damn it! Hissed Naruto brusquely as he pushed the gray-haired boy away and slumped onto his bunk. An annoyed scowl rose to his face again when he sensed a pair of eyes on him. He cocked his head, only to see Sai gazing blankly at him. What? Sai looked away. Soft whispers in the dark woke him up, indistinguishable blue eyes opening drowsily. So you agree with me? It's possible. Damn. The blonde sat up and leaned over, glaring in the direction of Sai's bunker. You too. One dark head and one gray head perked up at the sound of his commanding voice. An irritated sigh escaped the blonde's plump lips. What the hell are you doing? They both remained quiet. Sai gathered his knees within his arms. Shin heaved a gloomy sigh. Naruto. What? We may have to fight each other tomorrow. It's just similar to a practice performed in Kirigakure. In that village academy students fight each other to death in order to graduate. Weird village, commented the dark-haired boy. Golden eyebrows twitched. You got that right. You're a prat, Naruto. Sai spat callously. Shin covered his mouth with his hands to muffle his laughter. Naruto was sporting an extremely annoyed look on his usually prim and proper face, and that was just too amusing to watch. We do as we are told. We follow orders. The miffed blonde spat. If Leader Sama orders us to kill each other, then we should do so. Just like today. Kill each other like rabid dogs. Muttered the gray-haired youth. Like rabid dogs? Like rabid dogs. Whatever. Stop being so weak, you piece of scum. Naruto sneered before laying down on his bed again. An uncomfortable silence fell upon them, but Shin was quick to break it after few minutes. Oi, golden brother. What? Naruto hissed, resuming glaring at Shin. Don't call me. The elder boy chuckled lightly at his tone. Hey, if we are pitted against each other, would you give me a quick death like you gave Kay today? Sapphire eyes blazed with newfound annoyance. Sure, idiot, I'll make it even quicker. Wow, don't disappoint me then. Sai bowed his head to hide his giggles. Another long silence passed over the three boys until Naruto's now calm voice echoed through the dark air. Shin, Don't ever call me your brother again. Silence fell again in the dark chamber. Itachi stared deeply into Yondaimi's eyes, his own dark orb shaking in both shock and emotion. The Hokage stared back at him, but his posture was calmer, and for a moment Itachi wondered whether it could all just be a cruel joke. You will honor your word, Hokage-sama? The weasel finally managed to speak again. You'll spare my mother and brother? And my aunt? As I said before, I don't totally agree with counsel. He paused, frowning a little in a pensive manner and then resumed his speech. To be frank, it's a silly idea. Wipe out an entire clan in one night, and then the next day tell the citizens that one boy turned rogue because he lost his faith in his clan and went berserk. Nobody would buy it. Stupid old hags. But more than that, I don't want to put such cruel burden upon a boy like you. Shisui's sacrifice has done enough damage. Quote, Hokage-sama? Traitors must be executed, not killed. The Uchiha name will be stripped of its honor and respect. Anyone who's involved in the matter will be executed as well. But, he pressed on, giving the boy a piercing look, those mentioned 3 will be spared, just for your sake. Itachi dropped onto his knees. Hokage-sama, his voice shook with unrestrained emotion. Your generosity is too great, especially bestowed upon someone like myself. My generosity is freely given to those who are loyal. Minato softly spoke. Without your loyalty we could have had a gruesome disaster. You have a noble heart, Itachi. Keep it up, for Konoha needs outstanding youngsters like you. You may leave now. With a respectful bow Itachi dismissed himself, his chest trembling with delight and hope, yet with some trepidation, anxious about how was he going to tell his mother about the new turn of developments. As soon as the Uchiha boy left his office, Yondaimi's expression immediately shifted into an icy grimace, making a great contrast with the former smile that could light up the whole village. With a cynical snort, he tossed piles of documents backwards and stood by the window, looking down at Konoha. Signaling to one of the Anbu surreptitiously placed outside the window, Minato commanded. Tekuro, go and tell Danzo-san I want to see him immediately. The sky was blue. It was sunny day _too sunny, in fact. Today their leader Danzo presented himself at the last regulation. Everyone tensed up and fell into tidy and neat lines, coaxing the fatigue out of their bodies as they straightened their sore backs. Nonchalantly, Danzo studied each and every face with his one visible eye. Some looked pale, some looked numb, some looked cowed. How many of them were going to survive to see the end of that day? Half? Or only a quarter? Danzo stepped forward, his wooden staff kneading softly the grass underneath it. He voiced, any kind of emotion, whether fear, hatred, or anger, will prevent you from reaching your full potential. Anyone who's bound by useless sentimentalism is scum. Now let's see how many of you deserve the honorable title of root member. Let us begin. Then he began to call up matches. Sai gulped. Match with Kenji. The two boys exchanged glances from their respective spots. Danzo kept on calling matches, and Naruto was listening apathetically until he felt a pair of eyes on him. He threw a glance and saw Shin, who winked at him. Naruto scowled. Naruto. The blonde looked to the front again when his codename was called. Match with Shin. Sai looked at Shin. Shin looked at Naruto. Naruto? Naruto merely frowned. Holding a blade each, the blonde and gray-haired boy readied themselves to face each other. Naruto, Shin called in low tone, and again, for third time, Naruto ignored him. Then their leader shouted, start. Dozens of small feet picked up a pace. Arms crossed, Danzo watched the combats with a satisfied expression. The old man let out a small amused snort when he spotted Naruto dodging Shin's punch with ease. Way too easily. Just as expected, Naruto and Shin couldn't even be compared. The blonde held the power of a Biju. There was nobody there who held a candle to him. They were all so outclassed it wasn't even funny. Whoosh! Shin was blown away by Naruto's axe kick. The gray-haired boy flew a few good meters backward before hitting the ground with a thud. Blue chakra was swirling around the blonde's leg, progressively condensing into a blue cloud. Danzo glanced at it and smirked inwardly. Gripping his blade, Naruto immobilized his adversary with his weight. He grabbed the older boy by the collar, the edge of his blade just an inch away from his neck. Not that quick, Shin joked between pants. A hiss escaped Naruto's plump lips. Shut up _. Shin struggled a little under him. Their eyes met. Then unexpectedly, Naruto's earlier vivid look shifted into a confused expression. The distant sound of Danzu's voice rang up then. Don't hesitate. Don't let emotion hold you back. He's not your brother anymore. Naruto bit his lips, his hand still halted in midair. He glared down at Shin once again. There was something behind Shin's dark orbs. The blonde gulped. Images of years past swam across his eyes in slow motion. What do they call you, little brother? Are you okay? We are all brothers, idiot. No matter what, you're my brother. They were all too young. Still panting heavily, Shin flashed him a smile. Hey, little bro. What the? Are you okay? Sapphire eyes shook with confusion, before fury seeped into his slightly pale face. You idiot. Naruto. Danzo pressed stern tone. Come on, the idiot smiled again. Like dogs. We have no choice. You'll be fine. The blonde squeezed his eyes shut, his breath trembling as he slowly drew his blade. The next moment he opened his eyes as if startled, stabbing the metal edge into the flesh. Blood spilled. Shin's eyes widened for a moment, before his eyes drooped. He gave Naruto one last hearty smirk. Naruto blinked. Crack. The sound of something being broken inside the blonde's stomach reverberated in his ears. Something had indeed cracked. The blades stroked each other. Then a punch came. Sai was thrown backwards, the end of Kenji's blade an inch above his belly. Damn! Cursing under his breath, Sai desperately sought for a chance to dodge. However, he soon found himself in no need to escape, because Kenji suddenly turned away leaving his adversary behind. What the? Sai's blank expression slowly shifted into neigh of sheer horror when he realized that the brown-haired boy was darting towards the blonde, who was currently sitting over Shin's unmoving body. Hey! The watching root guards were about to grab the crazed brat but Danzo stopped them. Leave it, let's see what happens next. Naruto sat staring at the empty air, Shin's body still under his weight. The baka had smiled. The idiot had smiled when blood spilled from his neck. He suddenly felt his nausea rushing over again, as if a bloodthirsty compulsion was urging his body to take action. Looking down at his blood-stained hands, he found them shaking uncontrollably. Something hot was boiling hard inside the center of his body and he felt like he was about to explode. He then noticed a blurry something rushing towards him. Die! Almost subconsciously, Naruto ducked under Kenji's swing before grabbing his throat, crashing him down to the ground. Without the slightest ounce of hesitation, he took the blade from Kenji's hand and slit his throat. Kenji's eyes widened in a shock. Blood spilled once again. Naruto slowly drew the blade away before slipping it again into the opened wound. Blood splattered. He stabbed him again, and again, and again. And again. Naruto was stabbing the blade into the openly cut throat again and again, repeatedly, completely indifferent to crimson liquid that was splashing over his face, as if he were possessed by something. The few survivors screamed faintly at the scene. Although their hands were also stained with blood, they'd never dared to stab their already dead comrades again. Never. Enough. The blade fell onto the ground at Danzu's voice. Naruto slowly turned, staring up at his commander. The master gave the boy a curt nod. Good. Very good. The blonde let go dispassionately of Kenji's battered body. He was about to bow to the old man when he suddenly fell onto his knees, starting throwing up. Somebody screamed. It wasn't his usual vomit. He could feel the metallic taste of blood inside his mouth, and as he coughed the hot liquid flowed over his fingers. Panic rose. Naruto. Naruto felt Danzu's hand grabbing his shoulder. He coughed a few more times, spitting blood. He blacked out. Slowly, Naruto opened his eyes. The ceiling was unfamiliar, but he didn't really care. He felt hollow inside. He tried to sit up, but dropped back onto the cushions, unable to lift his back. So how are you feeling, kiddo? Naruto's brow rose at the unfamiliar voice. An elderly man with long gray hair and a weird beard was standing by his side, his yellow eyes examining him in a friendly way. Who are you? Me? The man pointed at himself, trying to insert some soothing humor. My name is Shino. I'm a special medic nin from some town out there. Your superior has asked me to check you up, so I did. Naruto stared at him. Now, you don't have to glare at me like that. Chuckling, Shino held Naruto's arm, helping him to sit up. I have few things to ask you. Naruto stared up at the medic nin with strangely empty eyes. What Weird yellow eyes shone at him as the old man voiced. You may give a few answers to my questions. As if, what? I won't tell you anything since I'm not ordered to do so. Replied the child in indifferent tone. Shino chuckled again. Whoa, don't worry, cool kid. This is part of my checkup, which your superior ordered me to do so. Naruto blinked. Grinning, Shino started. So, question 1. Do you often suffer from some kind of nausea? He gave the medic a silent nod. Question 2. Do you feel your body heavy often, like, what do I call that? Oh yeah, like when you've eaten too much? Another nod. Well, then question 3. The man cleared his throat and then continued. Do you train a lot in order to alleviate from those symptoms? A silent glare was thrown at him. How do you know this so well? Don't fret, cool kid. It's my job. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong, boy. It's just part of your growth. He laughed. The blonde's eyebrows twitched. That old man was getting on his nerves, with those constant weird giggles. Ah, kiddo. You just reminded me of my daughter. She's just about your age. Do you want to see a picture of her? Shino pulled out a small picture from his pocket, totally ignoring the blonde's disinterested attitude. Here, isn't she pretty? Naruto stared at it blankly. With callous indifference, Naruto stared at the reddish-brown-haired girl in the photo. She had a pair of rather thick eyebrows and blue eyes just like his own, and a small mole under the left eye. She doesn't look like you. That was all the rude boy could say. The yellow eyes widened in happy surprise. Wow, you're very observant. Actually, I'm not her biological father. I adopted her when she was a toddler, so. Pulling the sheet over himself, Naruto closed his eyes, leaving the old man to chat on his own. Interesting, very interesting. Danzu's lips curled sardonically at the amazed comment from Shino. Then tell me what's so interesting regarding his condition. Sitting on an offered chair, Shino rubbed his hands together, giggling. As you'd ordered, I did a checkup on the boy. You said he'd vomited blood? Yes. If there's any illness, he's not ill. He's very healthy, too healthy, as a matter of fact. Failing at eliciting any sort of amusing response from the old, one-eyed man, Shino sniffed little as he continued. The boy has too much chakra and stamina for a child of his age. It's a bit weird, for I'd never witnessed a case like him except for Jinchurikis. Danzu's brusque voice cut him short. He's not a Jinchuriki. I know, I'm well aware that the daughter of your Hokage is the Jinchuriki of this village. Right, and so? That's why I'm saying it's interesting. His state is similar to those of Jinchurikis, and yet there's no source of that power. Incredible, unbelievable, almost fantastic. That's why he's suffering from things like nausea and blood vomiting. His body is still too feeble to balance an overwhelming power. Do you understand? Silence again. Shino started to feel utterly bored at the man's calm reaction. With a sheepish look on his face, the medic Nin cleared his throat. Then Danzo questioned, what should we do then? Ahem. There's nothing you can do, really. Just let him concentrate on training as much as possible. That's the only way to ease his pain. When he's grown up, he'll either be able to control his power or the power will control him. It depends on the strength of his very own soul. His eyes pensive, Danzo merely nodded, causing the medic Nin to be even more disappointed. After Shino took his leave, Danzo made a hand sign to both Fu and Torun, who had been hiding in the shadows the whole time. This is an order, Fu. Tailed the old medic ninja secretly. Once he's out of Konoha, kill him. Don't leave any evidence. Fu bowed respectfully as he answered in an emotionless voice, hi. And Torun, go and bring Naruto here. He'll be joining the Uchiha executing mission. Sai was staring at his picture book, his frame shaking, and his eyes filling with wetness. Touching the liquid in confusion, he quickly wiped it away and disregarded it. Although his eyes held no emotion, there was a small flicker of sadness that was soon overshadowed by blank disinterest. Keep up drawing, you've got a talent. His pale finger thumbed through the pages until it reached the center of the book. 3 boys drawn together emerged. They were holding each other's hands. One grinning, next one smiling, and the last one frowning. Shin, Sai, and Naruto. Sai shut the book. Using a jutsu, he dug a hole under the tree, burying his book into the mud. The execution order had been confirmed. Uchiha Fugaku would be invited to Hokage's office that night, where he was to be finished by the Hokage himself. The strongest of root members were to sneak into Uchiha compound and kill them all. Once the execution was done, the Hokage's Anbu would come to dispose of the bodies. By the time a new day dawned on Konoha, everything would be officially revealed to the citizens, and dishonor and shame would befall the once mighty and highly respected Uchiha name. All the funds in the clan treasury would also be confiscated as punishment. So these three must be spared, however, Danzo continued, glancing down at the blonde. However, if you find the slightest window of opportunity, I want you to kill the little one. But don't act rashly. If Hokage-sama's Anbu squad arrives earlier, don't touch anyone mentioned above. Understand? The blonde merely nodded, his blue eyes pensive with thoughts. Then, looking up he questioned abruptly, "May I ask one thing, Danzo-sama?" The old man's brows furrowed slightly. "What? Why does Hokage-sama wish those three to be spared? They're traitors as well," he blurted, puzzled. "Because, he's too soft." Smirking inwardly, Danzo rose from his seat, taking a close look at the boy. "That's why he's committing this kind of mistake. You must set this as an example, and remember, sympathy is one of those petty and useless emotions, so don't you ever let your emotions prevent you from making an important decision. Otherwise you'll end up with cruel betrayal." "Hi, good, now go and prepare yourself." Seeing the blonde bow and dismiss himself, Danzo sat back and silently smirked again. Truthfully, he didn't have to assign Naruto to be part of the Uchiha execution team. His root men were strong enough to match the Uchiha scum, especially without Uchiha Shisui and Uchiha Itachi. However, if the boy was left on his own to brood, there was a small possibility of the boy being overwhelmed by his own emotions, despite the inhumane training he had gone through to remove all those useless feelings. It was imperative there remained no emotions whatsoever inside the blonde prodigy. It was vital no caring traits lingered inside. Slaying Uchiha would be a perfect final hurdle. Naruto looked down at his brand new Hite 8 and Tanto. With blank disinterest, he picked up the forehead protector and tied it around his upper left arm. He then sheathed double-edged Tanto into the scabbard on his back behind his right shoulder, staring vacantly at his reflection on the mirror. The face that stared back at him felt completely unfamiliar. Who's the boy with those empty blue eyes? He closed his eyes. He had killed Shin. His life had been ended by the one he had called little brother. He had killed the one that called him brother. He had survived. He was an honorable root member now. He lived by stepping over the scattered blood of failures. He had to forget. Forget the past. Forget everything. Forget all but loyalty. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of men with cat masks landed soundlessly on the rooftops. The pale moonlight created a bright halo against them as their eyes sparkled with bloodthirsty urge. Standing in the middle, Hio turned to his comrades and hollered his orders in the typical callous voice of Root. "We're going to dispose of the ninja clansmen first before we deal with the civilian sector and the children." They all nodded. "You, Naruto," he pointed his index finger at the tiny figure among the tall shinobi, then Hio continued, "While we're taking care of grown-ups, you'll take care of little ones." The spiky golden head, the face hidden by one of the cat mask replicas they all wore on that night, nodded curtly. "Are we all ready?" "Yes. Then let's begin." With a heavy growl, an Uchiha Chunin opened the gate and stepped into the clan's grounds. He strode across the yard, complaining loudly about the ravenous hunger that seemed to have taken over his stomach. It was then that he noticed the blood on the muddy earth. He blinked in confusion, and looking around he noticed the broken windows. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. With a gasp, he peeked through the broken windows and saw the dead bodies of his clanmates. Eyes widened in horror, he raced through the streets towards his own home, panting, as the taste of blood soared through the air and the descending odor of death settled in. Something then struck the back of his head. He fell onto the muddy ground, sprawled. He groaned loudly, quickly looking up to see the face of his attacker. It didn't take long for the trademark Kohl Uchiha eyes to blaze with rage. "What the? Who are you? Do you know who I am?" The tiny boy gazed impassively back at him behind the mask, drawing his blunt Tanto. The Uchiha Chunin squeezed his fists at that gesture and sprung up onto his feet. "Where are your partners? How dare you? Watch your mouth, you traitor," said the blonde invader in a disinterested dry voice, cutting through the Uchiha's indignant speech. The Chunin blinked. Slowly, his eyes widened once again, the eyeballs nearly popping out from their sockets. "Wha what?" The blonde didn't respond that time. It was already dark. Iruka had kept the students longer for an especially lengthened training session, so all students went back home late that day. Sasuke rushed quickly through the Konoha streets, mumbling hurried greetings to those who waved or nodded at to him. The villagers were quite nice to him. Then again, his father was the head of the Uchiha clan and the one who led police force, which protected the village of Konoha itself. And his brother thinking about his older brother made his onyx eyes turn sullen and brimming with confusion. Everyone admired his brother, and Sasuke included himself in that group. But those days, Itachi was acting quite strange. Sasuke often witnessed him quarreling with other clansmen. And then when at last clan head Fugaku took an interest in his youngest and not as prodigious son after watching said child producing a superb fire jutsu, he told him not to follow in Itachi's footsteps. Why? Everyone in Konoha admired Itachi, and the Uchiha clan had once admired him. Fugaku used to zealously praise his eldest, neglecting the youngest he sometimes seemed to have forgotten all about. So why did he say such a thing? Sasuke entered the Uchiha district. Distracted as he was by his thoughts, he did not notice that the streets were much too empty. He missed the dark reddish liquid that was leaking from some of the house doors' gaps. He didn't notice the shattered and cracked windows, nor did he notice the growing metallic scent that was beginning to hang in the air. Then he noticed. He skidded to a halt when he saw dozens of shurikens stuck around roofs and walls. Then he noticed shattered windows and broken doors. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. He moved through the streets of the Uchiha compound towards his home. Moments later he jumped backward with a yelp, feeling something cold and heavy pressed against his feet. Sasuke almost vomited when he leaned over to look at the blood-stained figures. Those were his cousins, a 4-year-old girl and a 2-year-old girl. They used to pick sunflower seeds together. The two corpses were piteously laid together, the littlest one huddled under the arm of her older sister. Sasuke's entire frame shook when he realized that there was something even more horrifying than the fact that they were dead. It was the fact that their eyes had been removed, and only the empty sockets remained. His entire frame shaking in terror, Sasuke raced towards his home, desperate, hoping that somebody was playing some kind of sick joke on him. As soon as he stepped into the yard of his home, he froze in his stance with a gasp. Somebody was there. There was a sealed well in the middle of the yard, where he spotted another of his cousins. Said cousin was a 15-year-old who had recently taken and passed the Chunin exam. He was leaning against the wall of the well, immobile with a blade encrusted in his chest. And in front of him stood somebody else, looking down at the dead boy. The naive Yondaime had simply wanted to talk about that year's festive plans with the heads of the two greatest clans in Konoha, who, coincidentally, happened to be childhood friends of his. With a silent smug, Uchiha Fugaku entered the ground of the Hokage's tower, wondering whether Hyuga Hiyashi had arrived before him or not. Don't worry, Minato-kun. This year will be an unforgettable festival for all of you, he thought. With a malicious smile, he mentally added, I'll make sure of it. He passed several Anbu guards, who bowed at him respectfully. The door of Yondaime's office was opened ajar. Has Hiyashi arrived already? Clearing his throat, Fugaku strode toward the office door and entered the room. Minato was sitting alone on his chair, his hands folded onto his desk and eyes closed. The moment the Uchiha stepped inside the room he opened his eyes, his blue orbs sparkling with cold emotion. I almost thought that you were sick, Fugaku-san. The quiet, but at the same time, deadly voice of the young Hokage resounded off the protected walls. Sasuke gasped again when the small figure with the cat mask slowly turned in his direction. Sasuke stared at the pale light of the moon shining brilliantly on the spiky and golden hair of the mysterious figure. Who are you? Cold silence was all the response Sasuke got. The quiet figure seemed to contemplate him for a while. Then, all of a sudden, he was in front of the young Uchiha, throwing a harsh punch into his stomach. Panting heavily, Sasuke lay sprawled on the muddy ground. He tried to hoist himself to his feet, but the pain was making him feel like his innards were shrinking inside of him. The blonde paid no attention to his whimpers. Methodically, he threw an arm around the raven-haired boy's neck, locking him in a tight grip, and began to drag him away. Sasuke screamed in terror as he struggled helplessly, trying no avail to break free from the blonde boy's iron grip. The blonde dragged him until they reached the well, lifting its wooden lid while still holding him in a one-arm death grip. Sasuke's eyes widened with horror at this. What are you doing? I'm going to drown you, the invader replied simply, his voice passionless. What? So that they won't notice, he answered and then pushed the Uchiha boy against the stone edge. Ang! Hollering and struggling with all his might, Sasuke flapped around his arms and legs, desperately trying to punch or kick the crazed slayer. Where were his parents? Where was Itachi? Why weren't they coming to save him? Were they dead, too? With a blunt noise, the blonde's mask fell off from his face when Sasuke's desperately swinging fists brushed against it. Both boys stopped their movements. Sasuke's dark eyes blinked confusedly for a few seconds before they became possessed with anger at the revelation of his killer's face. His murderer was just a boy around his age, but he was so. Naruto frowned when he saw the furious gleaming passing across the Uchiha's dark orbs. Why are you doing this? The Uchiha demanded. Cold sapphire-eyed sparkled disdainfully. Now I understand why you people need to be wiped away. What? Shut up, son of a traitor. You're all an arrogant bunch of trash. Sasuke's eyes flared at the blunt insult. What? How dare you? He then screamed again as the blonde recommenced his efforts to kill him. Sayonara, Uchiha. Cold sweat broke from the Uchiha's back at the sight of blue eyes brimming with merciless killing intent. Those eyes held no emotion at all. That boy was a monster. Ah! It was then that one of the mansion gates burst open, effectively interrupting the scene. Halt! He's to be spared. With another frown, Naruto immediately let go of the Uchiha boy, dispassionately throwing him to the ground. Sasuke. Sasuke quickly sprang onto his feet at his mother's voice. Makoto had just entered the gate, a group of Anbu guards beside her. Ka-san. He rushed toward her, relieved to see his mommy alive. He threw himself at his mother's chest. Sasuke. Makoto's hand gently rubbed his back, her voice broken and teary. Oh, Sasuke. What happened? Where's To-san? Ni-san? Makoto couldn't answer. She merely began to sob. Snorting slightly, Naruto picked up his mask and put it on his face again. Soon, several other root members emerged, landing around him and facing the Anbu squad. Throwing a glance around the bloodstained manor, Hitaki Kakashi heaved a sigh before approaching to the root operatives. Is it done? One of them nodded. Well done. Kakashi looked suspiciously down at the tiny blonde boy. His silver eyebrows began to twitch when he realized just how young that boy was, despite the fact that he couldn't see his face because of the mask. How old are you, little one? He then felt the stares coming from all of the root members. None of your concern, the blonde boy blurted. Kakashi smiled at that. All right, then. But weren't you instructed to spare the brother of Uchiha Itachi? The disinterested voice replied again, I did. And forgot his face. Ruffling his own hair, Kakashi nodded. All right, cool kid. Your mission ends here. Why are you letting go of them? Sasuke yelled abruptly at the silver-haired Anbu, causing everyone to glare at the Uchiha boy. He killed my cousins. And they. Watch your mouth, Uchiha. That time one of the Anbu guards muttered coldly. You're lucky to be spared, on Hokage-sama's mercy. Coal eyes widened once again in shock. What? Sasuke gaped at him. No one had ever talked to him like that. Hyo turned to his root comrades. Let's go. Mission success. Every Uchiha has been executed save for those spared 3. Itachi bit his fist, leaning against the door of the apartment. Squeezing his eyes shut, he felt his heart trembling, tense at thought of facing his mother and brother. After taking a deep breath, he faced the door, held the doorknob, and then opened it. At the sight the 3 dark heads perked up. Itachi gulped at the sight of his mother, brother, and Aunt Kyu. They were sitting on the tatami floor, and all of them seemed broken. The weasel blinked when he felt his brother's stare. An awkward silence fell. Itachi subconsciously flinched when Makoto rose to her feet and strode toward him. Upon seeing her teary face, he gulped again, not knowing what to do. Itachi. Ka-san. His voice shook a little as she came close. The next moment, he found himself crushed by his mother's hug, her arms wrapped around his shoulders. My poor child. She broke into sobs, holding her eldest tightly as if fearing he might vanish if she let go him. My poor child. Itachi stood still, frozen for a moment. Feeling his own orbs tearing up, he squeezed his eyes shut, allowing his mother to stroke his face for the first time ever since he'd become an official shinobi. How much of a burden it must have been. She kept on sobbing, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Behind Makoto's head Itachi saw Kyu's face, looking at him, her eyes full of sadness, even though she sent him a comforting nod. His heart felt as if it were cracking. Suppressing rising emotions, Itachi gently pushed his mother away yet held her shoulder with one hand. Ka-san, you need to pay a visit to Hokage-sama soon. As soon as possible. Makoto nodded, wiping her tears away. I know. I must thank him. Why thank him? An irritated voice from the youngest Uchiha rang up. Sasuke, didn't I tell you? Makoto screamed. Itachi looked down calmly at his brother. Without his generosity you would have been executed, too. He killed our father. And all of our relatives are dead. Why did you sell out the clan? Sell out? His tone turned cold. Don't you say such words again. All I did was keep my oath to the village. Our clan was plotting a rebellion, and Hokage-sama never forgives a single person who rises against him. So why are we alive? The younger boy snarled. If he's so deadly? Sasuke. Makoto yelled again. Itachi closed his eyes, his patience growing thin. In return for my information, I begged him to spare you. He could have refused, and the council didn't want any Uchiha alive except for me. But he decided to spare you, along with our mother and aunt, just for my sake. Hasn't Ka-san told you already? So now, know your place, foolish little brother. Sasuke flinched. His onyx eyes filled up with shock at the sudden outburst from his older brother. Itachi had never raised his voice at his younger brother before. Never. Heaving a sigh, Itachi lightly hit the wall before turning away and leaving the room. Makoto covered her face with hands, and sunk to the floor. Have you heard it? What a shame, such a noble clan. Noble clan? They were just filthy scum. Those hypocrites. They said the eldest son of the head of the clan had reported it to Hokage-sama. That boy is the only sane one. Hey, there goes the wife of Fugaku. Makoto felt her face heating at the whispering. She was walking toward the Hokage's tower early that morning. Before that day, people used to share greetings with her, waving or smiling or inquiring about her family. Now those very same people were giving her disgusted glares, whispering amongst themselves. Filthy traitor. Why did Hokage-sama spare them? He's too generous. He's as kind as he is handsome. Why are you talking about his looks now? Shut up, you jealous pig. Biting her lower lip, Makoto dropped her head, scolding herself inwardly. Don't you cry, fool, this is natural. She then wondered how would Kushina react once they met again. Would she change her attitude towards her, too? Or, Makoto sobbed silently. Looking up at the Hokage's tower she gulped, reality hitting her just then. Her heart began to thump wildly again, that time wilder than before. How would she face him then? Had he spared her just out of generosity? Or had Kushina begged him to spare her friend? Or, is Hokage-sama inside? She asked politely to one of the guards. The Anbu glanced at her, then without a word he gave her a curt nod. Hokage-sama, an Uchiha woman came. Send her in. Hi. The Anbu guard left, closing the door behind him. Minato then made several hand signs, and part of them ordered his bodyguards, who were always lurking in the shadows, to leave for a while so as to keep that meeting uninterrupted, while the rest of signs created a soundproof barrier around the walls of the room. The door opened once again and Uchiha Makoto entered, obviously nervous, her eyes full of both sadness and fear. Hello, Makoto-san. Without moving his gaze away from the papers he'd been working on, Minato muttered. Come, take a seat. Makoto sat on a chair clumsily. Yondaime arranged several documents on the table languidly, letting the Uchiha female feel more desperate by his silence. Then, he finally spoke up, and again without moving his gaze away from the papers. Well, so what brings you here? Makoto squirmed. She hadn't expected that kind of question. Wasn't it natural for her to pay him a visit after such an incident? To both thank him and apologize. She gulped and took a deep breath before opening her mouth. Hokage-sama. I want to thank you. Not just for your mercy upon us, but also for not putting all the burden on my eldest shoulders. The Yondaime did not respond. He simply rearranged a few more documents, piled them together, and after tossing them backward, he finally looked straight at her. Is that all? Makoto flinched at the fierce sapphire gaze piercing through her. Hokage-sama. He looked almost bored. Is that all you've got to say? So you don't have any other thing to confess? Dark eyes widened in confusion. Confess? Did he mean her involvement in the rebellion matter? But, her involvement was only natural. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama? I don't understand. A tired sigh escaped the blonde's lips. You don't? The Uchiha blinked, feeling an unwilling shudder run through her spine. She gulped again, as the awkward silence continued except for the sound of rustling papers. Silence resumed for few more minutes, then at last it broke away by a still calm voice. You knew what was going on about your eldest. She flinched again at that, her eyeballs nearly popping out from their sockets. Huh? He smiled, a bit sardonically. You have been involved in the matter as well. I'm sure that you noticed something about your own son. It must have been quite freaky, huh? Hokage-sama. And still, he crossed his arms. Why didn't you just come directly to me and reveal everything about the coup? She clutched her own hands together, feeling blood rushing to her face. I just. Suddenly, his golden eyebrow arched, creating one of his rare frowns. Instead of being loyal, you chose to play a game with me. Come on, admit it. Don't play innocent. Your every action showed hinted. I know women as much as you do. I've encountered so many girls like you before. Tell me, do I look that foolish? She felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. So he knew. The whole time, he knew. She must have looked like an idiot, for sure. One of her instincts started to scream, telling her that something disastrous was going to happen. She trembled a little. She didn't know that she had been that clumsy. She hadn't known that he was so suspicious. She'd underestimated that man far too much. I don't understand what you're talking about, was all she could mumble, dazed. The cold blue eyes narrowed. Makoto-san, do not trifle with me. I'm in a particularly foul mood today. But really, he rose from his chair. I don't share your damned husband's taste, so when I play rough it's going to hurt. I really hate it when a girl dares to play a game with me. Her knuckles whitening, Makoto gulped again, feeling a shiver run through her body as he approached her. This man is. So what were you going to do? He continued dryly, if your little flirt succeeded. I just wanted to save my children, she muttered with trembling voice, tears of fear filling her dark eyes. He blinked. Then suddenly, a cynical smile began to take place at the end of his lips. So the matter of your children comes out. Well, a typical excuse from women. But I can't see any relation between your excuse and our issue. So the matter of your children comes out. Well, a typical excuse from women. But I can't see any relation between your excuse and our issue. Makoto once again squirmed at the remark. A typical excuse from women? It was kinda no, very appalling to hear such words from this man. Wasn't he supposed to be all honorable and nice? I know that you'd become into one of those fangirls as you kept on buzzing around me. He continued, his voice full of mockery. Weren't you? You had been so unguarded as much as you'd been so clumsy with your little game. And at nights, sapphire gaze pierced her face. Didn't you actually have some kind of damn wet dreams about me? Blood rushed onto her face. The question was insulting and rude, arrogant and conceited, and yet, she couldn't help feeling guilty. Had he been just reading through her mind? She rose from the chair she'd been sitting on, hastily clutching her handbag as she noticed something dark sparkling behind the Hokage's blue orbs. Minato stopped his movements at this and gazed her with a disinterested countenance. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, I'm really grateful about what you did, but you have some misunderstandings about me. Maybe I just should be back sometime later. She then turned, desperate to escape from the room but was stopped soon when the Yondaimi's hand grabbed her shoulder from the back. With a gasp she turned to face him again, soon to yelp when his callous hand slapped her face with a stupendous force. She hit the floor with a thud, dazed by the blow, tears trying to spring free from their confines within her eyes. A shock froze her body first. Then a pain rushed coming, causing her slender frame to shake both by pain and fear. Don't, ever, play innocence with me, Minato muttered in passionless tone, as if nothing serious had really happened in his peaceful office. Makoto merely rubbed her face, her body frozen with a shock, beads of tears falling from her big dark eyes. They'd been knowing each other since their childhood. Ever since they'd entered the academy. Minato, Kushina, Fugaku, and Makoto herself. She thought she knew well of her childhood friends. On Kushina or Fugaku perhaps she was right, but... She blinked, feeling more tears streaming over her throbbing face. It was so unbelievable that she herself almost couldn't regard this situation as a reality. Could Minato be this cruel to her? Well, he could be cruel on the traitors, that's natural. But couldn't he just be more kind to a woman who's just torn to shred, her own husband and relatives executed horribly just a day ago? But being slapped was only a mere start. Flinching, Uchiha Makoto gulped helplessly when the blonde held her chin roughly with his large hand and made her look up. Cold sweats broke onto her forehead at the sight of those darkened blue eyes. Through the haze of tears she mumbled, desperate. I'm sorry, I didn't meant to. He heaved a tired sigh once again. Only now the acknowledgement comes out. Why didn't you say that earlier? You'd have evaded being slapped then. I don't understand why you girls are being so stupid on a matter like this. I didn't really mean to fool you. Her words were stopped then. The dark eyes widened with a confusion when she realized that his index finger was injected between her lips. She blinked, not understanding the situation, soon to be dominated by a horror when few seconds later the Hokage emptied her mouth, his finger wet with her saliva. She barely managed to mutter with a trembling voice when she felt her skirt being tucked up. I'm your wife's friend. His eyes sparkled with a mockery. Was that on your mind when you'd started to play your little game? The reality hit her head then. Her clan was destroyed. Her husband was dead. There was no one to protect her now. Sasuke sat silently in his seat, ignoring his classmates' whispers and stares being poured onto him. Despite the disdains from those very same people who used to look up at him with an admiration, he still held his head high, putting a cold and arrogant mask on his face, not wanting to get any sympathy from anyone. There was a rage boiling inside him every time they threw glares at him, but he patiently swallowed his emotion and decided to stay noble. Not that long. The Uchiha boy nearly flinched when he felt somebody perking in front of his seat, looking straight at his face. He pressed a twitch when he recognized the red hair and violet eyes of Namikaze Minami. "Oi Sasuke." She addressed him, her big violet eyes sparkling with an evil mischievousness. He simply ignored her and again fixed his gaze to the outside the window. He felt the kids gathering around them, watching the two interestingly to see how the event would turn out. A long silence passed as Minami kept on staring at Sasuke's face and Sasuke kept on ignoring her. Then all of a sudden he felt a pain upon his forehead. With a scowl he looked forward. Minami had just punched him with her fist. "How can you be so arrogant and blunt after all of this?" The redhead asked, a playful mockery contained in her cheeky voice. Few kids began to giggle. Sasuke took a deep breath, glaring the girl. Then outrageously almost bravely, he raised his hand and then slapped her hard. "Ah!" Few girls screamed at the scene. Yelping, Minami covered her face with a hand, soon to stare up at the Uchiha with an anger in her eyes. "What? How dare you hit me, you son of a traitor!" Then she jumped onto him. The other kids around them began to make loud noises, some screaming, some cheering at the fight between the disgraceful Uchiha boy and the honorable daughter of the Yondaime who was at the same time the heroine of Konoha. Only few boys were completely disinterested with the commotion and resumed their naps. "Minami-chan, Sasuke, kick his ass, Minami-chan." Whoosh! Suddenly the door of the classroom slammed open. Everyone except for the two fighters who were exchanging angry blows fell silent immediately. "What the hell is going on here?" An angry voice from the academy teacher resounded off the classroom wall. Uzumaki Kushina pressed a sigh when she scrutinized the small door of the new apartment. Pity shook her heart as she took a courage to place her finger onto the bell, soon pressing it softly. She then waited for a quite while, until the door was finally opened and a woman with long dark hair came out. "Oh, Kami, it's..." The Uchiha's eyes widened at the sight of the wife of the Hokage. "Hello, Kyu-san." Quickly putting a normal and cheerful smile, Kushina nodded at her. "Is Makoto-chan at home?" Yes, Kushina-sama," Kyu replied bit fearfully. "But she's not so stable. Is she sick? What a stupid question am I throwing?" Kushina immediately scolded herself as Kyu blankly stared at her. Crap. Kyu seemed to hesitate for a few moments, however soon nodded at her. "Come in, Kushina-sama." The inside of the apartment wasn't as small as it seemed outside. There were 3 bedrooms all in all, along with small but proper kitchen and 2 bathrooms. However, no matter how the new apartment was finely furnished, it couldn't be even compared with the grand Uchiha mansion. Makoto-chan? The redhead carefully approached to the figure that was laid almost sprawled into Tadami floor, wrapped within the blanket. Makoto. The addressed Uchiha female squirmed at the voice. Soon she shoved the blanket off of her body and slowly sat up, revealing her anguished feature to her old friend. Kushina again felt her heart sinking with a sympathy. Her friend looked totally wrecked. Makoto always had been having an opposite nature with Kushina. Unlike the tomboyish redhead, the Uchiha was always bit more of feminine, being somewhat fragile and emotional while being a kunoichi. When they were still little, boys used to play nasty pranks upon them. Makoto was a type of the girl who would merely sob by the pranks, while Kushina was an avenger, taking her revenge by beating the shit out of the naughty boys. And still, Uchiha Makoto never looked this broken before. Ever. Pressing her tears, Kushina sat beside the Uchiha female. Makoto-chan, she mumbled, squeezing her friend's hand. With reddened eyes, Makoto blankly stared at the redhead. She blinked few times, emotions shaking her heart violently before tears started to fall from her dark eyes. Upon seeing this, Kushina hugged her tightly, her beautiful violet eyes also getting wet. "Oh, Makoto." Makoto gulped, trying to press an urge to weep loudly like a child. Burying her face against Kushina's shoulder, she sobbed silently for few minutes, her slender shoulders quaking pathetically. "I'm sorry," the Uchiha mumbled then between her sobs. Without a word, Kushina tightened her embrace, not quite understanding the reason of the apology. "I'm sorry," she then whispered back. "I'm sorry that I couldn't have persuaded my husband." Makoto shook her head, not daring to speak anymore. Amongst the feeling of sorrow and despair, there existed a guilt which pained her most. Guilt. She just couldn't find the way how she would face her old friend again, after all those. Truthfully, she'd disgraced their friendship so far. And also her own husband, just a day after his death. She squeezed her eyes shut at the thought of Fugaku. It would take a long time for her to forget him. She would always remember the time with him, the very time since they were all so young. His every gazes, his gestures, his habits. The smiles of the way he gently smiled, which only his wife could ever witness. Despite his blunt personality, he always had been gentle, affable to her. He'd loved her that much. She knew it. Now she was being punished. She was paying so dearly for her treacherous thoughts she had bore against her friend and her own husband. She knew it and had savored every pain of the guilt while screaming pathetically in the Yondaimi's arms. The blonde had took what he wanted fully, savoring her and breaking into her until she had become totally broken and bleeding, and only then he'd satisfied. What life Kushina would have been lead on, with such a horrible man as a husband. The village's beloved Yondaime was far more gruesome than anyone would expect. But Uchiha Makoto couldn't speak a word of it. Not to Kushina, not to anyone else. So she just kept on sobbing, locked between Kushina's arms, soon to realize that both of them were sobbing. Kyu watched the two friends by the door, tears also filling into her own eyes. The Yondaime placed his hand onto his temple, pressing an urge to yell. Iruka and Mizuki were standing stiffly in front of him. Beside them was Uchiha Itachi, with an almost sheepish look on his usually grim and proper face. They all look like criminals waiting for their death sentence, thought Kakashi as he crossed his arms standing beside the Hokage's desk. He then felt sorry for the Uchiha Anbu. The boy already went through so much that his wild little brother didn't really have to mess things up. Children, all of them flinched when the Hokage finally opened his mouth in grim tone. Can be so cruel sometimes. Hokage-sama? The sapphire eyes looked almost bored by now. You said all of your students had claimed that Sasuke picked up a fight with my daughter in first place? Why yes, Hokage-sama. Except for few. Slurring the end of his words, Iruka looked at Mizuki. Mizuki scratched the back of his head. Few boys and one girl. Minato smiled bit sardonically. And which one of the two factions do you think is telling the truth? A tensed silence fell. Then Itachi voiced. Hokage-sama, do not speak, please. A silence fell again. Itachi merely exchanged glances with Kakashi, his knuckles whitened. Minato became pensive with thoughts for a while before speaking again. I should have thought of the impact of the execution for the boy. He's still young, he has to live with the other children. It's cruel to leave a child branded as a son of a traitor. They all blinked. Hokage-sama? I know children. I know my daughter. You know my daughter. She must have insulted the boy at first place, just like other witnesses had said so. And I can't blame the boy for becoming violent with that. It's just natural. He then rose from his seat. I have nothing more to say on the matter. Kakashi sighed inwardly with a relief while the other three widened their eyes in disbelief. Minato then looked at Itachi this time. Disciple your brother well, Itachi, as I would do to my daughter. He added gently. I don't want any children fighting to get in our way. Almost subconsciously Itachi dropped onto his knees, his voice hardly remaining his usual calmness. Hokage-sama, I don't deserve this kind of generosity from you. I'm not being generous, I'm just being fair, since it's my daughter who had done wrong. He frowned little then resumed. It's disgraceful to berate a boy who's just lost so much and disgraced so far. Well, I'll say no more. You're all dismissed. After the academy teachers and the Uchiha Anbu left the office, Kakashi remained to joke with his teacher. Not that bad, the Sasuke boy. Minato muttered with a humor. If we offer few chances to the boy then he'll grow into a quite fine shinobi. Well, I agree on that, but you've surprised me a bit. Why, do you have any views on the matter? No, actually I think you're quite nice. The silver-haired Anbu thumbed up cheekily. Minato chuckled a bit, then quickly began to arrange his papers. Kakashi alerted at this. What's this? Going home early today, sensei? Yes, I've got things to do. Kakashi blinked few times, noting the blonde's suddenly grimly turned voice. Sensei, is what I'm thinking right? Without looking up the Yondaime nodded. Guess so. Sensei, children grow fighting. I know that, the golden brows furrowed bit annoyingly. But I don't want my children to get spoiled that much. And this isn't just childish quarrel matter. It's almost dishonorable. The Anbu merely shrugged. Whatever you think is right, I won't resent on it. Standing in front of the apartment door Itachi heaved a sigh, his dark gray eyes weary with thoughts. Then shaking his head he flung open the door. Itachi. Upon seeing him returned Makoto quickly approached him with an anxious look on her haggard face. What happened? Are you alright? The weasel merely managed to make a crooked smile before moving his gaze onto Sasuke who had just stepped out of his room. The younger Uchiha boy blinked a bit nervously when their eyes met together. However soon a stubborn scowl rose upon his pale face. I don't care about what they're gonna do to me. I won't let anyone insult me that way, so if the bitch paws me again I'll fight her again. Sasuke. Makoto yelled. An anger broke into the elder Uchiha male's face. He shoved his mother's hand off from his arm and strode toward Sasuke, causing the latter to subconsciously take a small step backward. You stupid little. Sasuke instinctively shut his eyes when Itachi raised his hand. If his brother hits him, he would willingly accept it and wouldn't surrender his dignity. Sasuke. With a confused look Sasuke opened his eyes when he felt Itachi's hand meekly falling upon his shoulder, with his other hand caressing the younger's spiky head. Blinking quizzically the little boy stared up at his brother's dropped head. Never do this to me again. Itachi's voice was feeble and shaky, as if he's pressing an urge to sob. Sasuke gulped. I'm sorry, Ni-san. He then felt his own voice also rough. Suddenly it began to pain him when he just realized how much he was hurting his elder brother with all of this. It wasn't him alone who'd lost their father and relatives. Itachi lost them as well, and all he did was being faithful to his damn shinobi oath. Itachi heaved a long, worn-out sigh before abruptly asking, Are you wounded? The younger boy shook his head. I'm fine. She was much weaker than I actually thought. Itachi blinked at this. Sasuke blinked back. A weird silence flew between the Uchiha brothers until both of them helplessly started to giggle. Nothing had really changed even after the so great loss. They were still brothers, and the only remained Uchiha males in the world. Watching her sons beside them Makoto let out a small, relieved sigh. Ka-san, refill. Young lady, with a sigh Kushina took an empty bowl and poured more ramen into it. How many times do I have to tell you not to yell? Then offering a new bowl to Minami she sat beside Kazumi, who was also busy with her own ramen. Watching her two girls eating Kushina became pensive with her own thought, thinking about Makoto. Poor girl. Perhaps Kushina would find a way to do something to uplift her feeling, even a little. The redhead perked up alerted when she heard the sound of the mansion gate opened. Has Minato come back already? Minato-kun? She rose from her seat, greeting in affable tone when the blonde threw his Hokage cloak away and walked into the kitchen. "You're done with work? Are you hungry?" "I'm fine." Flashing a short reply now, Minato looked down at the daughters who'd become silent and were quietly chewing their noodles. Soon his glare fixed onto his eldest, his face grim. Kushina carefully approached to her husband, getting anxious. Minato hardly ever threw a single gaze upon their daughters. And this kind of glare. "Minato-kun, what's wrong?" Minami was still eating her ramen, though was she actually flinching with a guilt when her father placed his hand onto the table and then looked straight at her eyes. "Namikaze Minami." He opened his mouth in dry tone. "Tell me what happened today in academy." Kushina looked at Minami, blinking. "In academy? So you're not informed, huh?" Minato threw a reproachful glance to his wife. "I don't know. What happened?" "Nothing." Minami mumbled timidly. Minato's eyebrows twitched. "And now you're lying to me? Minami-chan, tell us what happened. Don't lie to your father." The mother raised her voice, fearing some kind of stormy turn of the event. Kazumi stopped eating as well and stared at her elder sister. Minami merely chewed her noodles. A tensed silence fell in the kitchen for few seconds. A cynical smile passed across the Hokage's lips. "Very good, huh? Minato-kun, what happened?" "Oh, you." He turned to the redhead to gaze her straight. "And what do you do at home?" Violet eyes shook with a confusion. "Huh? What do you do at home, allowing your girls to mess up with everyone outside? Your softness had caused them to be nothing more than spoiled little brats. So you don't even know what happened?" "Well, she officially insulted the Uchiha boy today and had a nasty fight with him. And now she's lying to me." "Very good, I'm quite impressed." Her mouth gaped. Kushina turned to Minami. Minami blinked. "Minami-chan, is what your father saying the truth?" He started it first. The girl mumbled helplessly. "Sasuke, so he started it first?" Minato smiled sardonically. "And how so?" "He had dared to slap me." "He had dared to slap you, he dared?" His sapphire eyes were getting colder and colder. "And just who do you think you are? You think I being a Hokage and you being my daughter is an indulgence to everything you do? Do you think you're a princess or something?" "Wait, Mina-kun, calm down." Kushina clutched his arm, but he shoved her hand off from him. "How can I be calm when my daughter had disgraced me to no end? What do you think people would think of us if things keep on going like this?" The redhead dropped her head. "I'm sorry, it's my fault." Then she again turned to Minami. "Minami, tell us the truth and apologize to your father." But the girl was stubborn. "But all I did was telling the truth. He's so arrogant, even though he's a Minami." Kushina tried to scold but was cut short by her husband. "Enough of your bullshit," Minato yelled, his voice finally turned into a high tune and the veins pulsing upon his temples. "What an incorrigible little brat. You underscore." Snarling between his teeth, he grabbed Minami's wrist roughly and began to drag her away. Kushina's eyes widened at this, her face turning pale. "Am I Minato-kun? Wait, Ka-san." Bursting into tears, Minami called her mom help-seekingly, her small frame shaking with a horror. Kushina gasped when Minato went inside the study room with the crying girl and shut the door behind him, locking it inside. Her hands trembling, Kushina knocked the door several times, went to and fro, then headed to the toddler's room when she heard Aika's loud crying. The blonde babe was crying at the top of her lungs, and didn't quiet down easily even when her mother hugged her within her arm. "Shush." Feeling her own breath trembling, Kushina cooed her youngest. "It's okay. It's okay. Please be quiet. Please." She then felt something nudging her hip. Looking down, she noticed Kazumi beside her, her large blue eyes also teary with a fear. "Ka-san. It's okay. It's okay." Holding Aika in one hand and hugging Kazumi within the other arm, Kushina mumbled and mumbled again like a prayer underscore as if consoling herself then consoling her daughters. There wasn't a rank system in Root. Unlike the Anbu, which had a squad system including squad captain rank, Root members were all equally ranked with only one leader, Danzo. However, according to Hyo, there also was a class, even in Root, dividing its members into two classes. Currently there were about 10 all in the first class, leaving other hundreds members as secondly classed. To be classified within the first, the member had to be excessively powerful, sadistic and cruel, as well as being emotionless, and then lastly, nicely featured. Some missions may lead you to take advantage of people getting in your way, advised Hyo. As well as you had wiped your own emotions away, You must learn how to play with your enemy's emotions. Naruto merely nodded at this. He didn't understand what his looks had something to do with missions, but they said he would become quite devastating after few more years. He was given more credit after the Uchiha execution mission. He could feel some of his comrades, who were ex-brothers all in all, glancing at him with the admiring intentions. But he didn't really care. The fall of the Uchiha clan was being the biggest news in ninja nations nowadays. Some of the other villages criticized Konoha's Yondaime for being too cruel executing even civilians and children but most countries praised the deed, though at the same time they were fearing Konohagakure and its leader even more. Sai had stopped both speaking and drawing. Naruto didn't feel a need to speak to him, and Sai didn't accost him either. With their emotions torn to shreds and Shin's death, things could never be same. The blonde hardly managed to remember the time when Sai had first slipped into his bunker when they were around 2-year-old. Since the babehood, Naruto's body had a very high temperature without a figurable reason, while Sai always had shivered in cold. The blackhead's body was as cold as an ice, so he often used Naruto as a heater for his freezing body. At first Naruto callously shoved the icy cold boy off of his bunker, until he realized that he could use him as a cooler in return. Then afterwards Shin had approached them. And some nights he thought of the Uchiha kids he'd slew. The way they died were too pathetic compared to the way Shin died, especially the females. One of the little girls had squirmed and hollered in an indescribable way while his Tonto was poking her stomach. He felt numb at boys' screams, but it was tad hard to bear hearing a girl screaming. He couldn't understand the reason. Perhaps it's because Rude had no female in it. Sometimes he wondered when would be his last moment. He would not die in a way his victims did. He'd just simply fall and accept his defeat. And until then, he would live, as a Root member, as Danzo's weapon. The Namikaze mansion was quite simple, compared to the manners of the leaders of other villages. There was a grand yard inside it, mostly used for no more than trainings. Inside the mansion there were lots of portraits placed upon the walls of every room. Some of them were portraits of famous heroes, like Shodai Hokage or Sarutobi Sasuke. However, most of the portraits were from unknown artists. After observing all of these, Danzo now turned his gaze to the cup of tea in front of him. It had been almost 20 minutes since the lady in front of him started to wriggle, having a hard time to speak out whatever was on her mind. The wife of the Hokage asking the most notorious councilman to visit her under secrecy. Obviously the lady wanted something that would go against her husband's will. Seeing his own patience running out, Danzo took a sip of his tea and then broke the silence for the lady. "So what's your business with a man like me, Kushina-sama?" Konohagakure, 3 weeks before the village festival. He was lying on the grass, his dark, weary eyes half closed. He had been there laid quite for a while, witnessing once blue skies slowly turning into crimson red by twilight. The forest hadn't changed that much, save for the fact that there no more was a grand Uchiha manor right in front of it. It had been years. This place once had been a secret place, for him and his late father. The day he turned into 4, his father had started to train him here every evening though it had been more like a battle game than a real training. There had been too much fun in it that he himself almost couldn't regard it as a training. And they had kept it as a secret to anyone, that not even his mother found it out. Then his father had stopped taking him to the forest the day he joined the academy. He heaved a sigh at the flooding memories. Now all left for him were repentance, repentance and repentance. Tears formed into his gray eyes then. He himself couldn't understand why he was still living in this place where only shame was left. He then thought of his mother, his aunt, and then his pathetic little brother. But the heavy responsibility didn't help him to understand the reason that much. "Where are you?" He quickly sprang up as the certain grim voice suddenly rang upon him. There was no one around, but he could hear the voice speaking for him. "Come back." The voice spoke again. He began to run then, rushing back to the center of Konoha. "Hurry up." Tears again filled into his dark pools as he speed up. Konohagakure, 2 weeks before the village festival. "Kushina-sama, it's already at dusk." The monk's calm voice resounded off the wooden walls of the temple. Her figure knelt in front of the statue, and her hands still squeezed together. Kushina opened her eyes, a sigh escaping through her lips when her prayer was interrupted. It had been a year since she'd visited the temple every afternoon to pray. Sometimes she broke into tears while praying because of the wavering emotions as she asked for God's help. With a melancholy air around her, Kushina left the temple, her beautiful violet eyes fallen downcast. She walked through the empty streets, then through the marketplace where people were booming. She made a feigned smile every time the civilians greeted her, or inquired her about her family, or commented about her beauty. Her beauty. She smiled a bit sardonically at the word. Seriously, what good was there for the beauty among the beauties if she wasn't actually beloved by her own husband? It had been years since she and Minato had made love. Nowadays Minato was being even more indifferent to their households, treating their daughters like annoying, troublesome bugs, though he took an unforgiving action if any of them caused a trouble. And their girls were not really growing that well. Minami was still plain almost pathetic in her training, causing everyone around her to tilt his or her head quizzically, and always ranking average score in academy. Seriously, how could she be that plain with Biju's power sealed into her? It seemed like Kyuubi had succeeded in blocking any human influence from taking his chakra away. Or maybe it's just because she's still young. But Kushina once had been the demon's vessel, and she hadn't been like her daughter when she was little. So what's the problem? Without Minato's help she couldn't find out that much. Kazumi was making an average score in her academy as well. Besides training Minami, Kushina tried to help her second as much as possible, but Kazumi wasn't that zealous, and often had a nasty fight with her elder sister, claiming that she'd always been ignored because of her. The poorest one was Aika, the youngest. No one except for her mother cared about her in their house. Kushina now knew well that all the misfortunes were caused by the fact that she wasn't able to bear a son. But how would she bear a son if her husband hardly touches her? Had Minato just gave all the possibility up? If only I could bear a son. She abruptly skidded to a halt when she felt she'd hit someone. Sorry, Kushina-sama. Kushina smiled when she realized that it was the elder son of Makoto. Oh, Itachi-kun, how are you? I'm good. You're on your way back home? That's right. Let me guard you, then. Kushina smiled again, pressing a rising irritation as the Uchiha Anbu began to walk beside her, guarding her. The time went fast. This boy had been a crying toddler when she'd seen him first time. And now the baby had grown into a fine figure of a man, being a best example of loyal shinobi. Uzumaki Kushina was a good woman. But no matter how good she was, she couldn't help feeling irritated with this boy, all because of her own husband. Though Kushina loved, and at the same time, sympathized her friend Uchiha Makoto, she also was jealous. Seriously, how could a woman not be jealous if her husband seemed to care more about her friend's children than their own children? And especially this Itachi boy. Minato was almost treating him like his own son nowadays. Her daughters hated the Uchiha boys as well. Minami hated Sasuke with all her heart because she thought he's arrogant and had no respect, especially since she'd been severely punished by her father after a quarrel with the boy. Kazumi hated Itachi because she thought he'd taken their father's love away from them, and Aika. Well, Aika was too young to think of such things. Few painful coughs from Itachi broke the redhead from her own reveries. Are you sick? She asked, trying to make her voice as gentle as possible. Itachi made a crooked smile. I'm fine. I just forgot to drink the tea this morning. Tea? What tea? The coal eyes blinked innocently. The tea Hokage-sama had offered to me. Rin-san made it with some medical herbs, so that it'll help my troublesome coughs. He smiled good-heartedly then. Kushina nearly let out an irritated sigh. Minato had ordered Rin to make a special herbal tea just for this boy's coughs? And just how many times had she been telling him that there's something wrong with Minami? She pressed a twitch, a jealousy raising its ugly head. You should take care of yourself well. She blurted out almost unintentionally. AS-ranked shinobi suffering a cough problem? It doesn't look good. The boy seemed a bit confused at her strangely turned tone. I'm aware. I'm sorry, Kushina-sama. He bowed apologetically. Well, it's not really a matter of an apology. What the heck am I doing? Kushina felt an urge to slap her own mouth. What the heck was she doing? Revealing her, pissed, feeling so stupidly in front of this Uchiha boy. Hitaki Kakashi stared down at the bundle of the papers on the desk. After a brief sigh he began to flip them with his half-gloved hand, his revealed eye deep with anxious thoughts. Kids, muttered Yamato as he threw a glance at the files Kakashi was reading. Well, they are running wild, aren't they, senpai? Kakashi merely frowned. It's not really a big deal, for the boys at such age. Anko voiced, crossing her arms. Creating a gang and making happenings everywhere, that's just understandable. The problem is that Uchiha and Hyuga boys are leading the gang. Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji. Yamato then sighed. What did they do this time? They vandalized one of the stores in a marketplace. With another sigh, Kakashi tossed the files away. Just like Anko said, 10-year-old boys creating a gang for fun was kinda natural rather cute in Hitaki Kakashi's demise but their actions were getting wilder and wilder. And what's big deal was that the brother of Itachi was among the group, causing chaos. The complaints from the villagers were indescribable, especially toward the Uchiha boy naturally. Some were even claiming that they must put the boy into the prison. Poor Itachi-kun, Anko murmured. The boy isn't that an evil brat, I mean the Sasuke boy. Yamato commented with his usual calm, melancholy tone. He's quite nice to his elder brother anyway. And I also heard that he's the top in his class. The boys that age just want to have fun, feeling delights at the derailments. Kakashi shrugged. The mother of Hyuga Neji claims that Uchiha Sasuke must have put bad influence upon her son. And it seems like Hyuga clan leaders also agree with her. They all became pensive then. Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji had a lot in common. They'd both lost their fathers at young age. They were both vindictive and aggressive. Probably such resemblance made them into friends, causing them to end up creating a childish gang. Despite the mother's tearful pleas, the relatives or the elder brother's scolds, they did not stop. Probably they thought it cool. Bastards. At least the Yondaime was being quite generous upon the matter. Every time the trouble occurred, the blonde Hokage simply consoled the angry citizens, offered them a right kind of compensation, and then advised them to understand the boys in adolescence. All the generosity for the sake of Uchiha Itachi. The Yondaime quite cherished the Uchiha Anbu. But if Hyuga clan starts to make a move against Sasuke, it'd be a bit different story. The Hyuga clan leader had been Minato's childhood friend, and Minato would not be able to ignore his complaints. And everyone knew that Itachi's mortal vulnerable point was his little brother. Here's your change, Kushina-sama. Thank you. The bag looks really gorgeous. Hikari whispered to Kushina as they both stepped out from the shop. You think so? I'm actually worried if it's too expensive then. No way, it suits you well. Kushina smiled at the comment from Hyuga Hikari. Nowadays the redhead mostly hanged out with the Hyuga woman the wife of Hyuga Hiyashi instead of Uchiha Makoto. She didn't really meant to turn away from her former best friend, however. Having Makoto's company was way too mess. Though it's been 4 years since the Uchiha incident happened, citizens of Konoha were still freely showing their hatred toward the Uchihas, and every time they saw Makoto and Kyu on the street they poured glares and aggressive whispers onto them. Some of the citizens even had politely advised Kushina not to accompany the filthy Uchiha woman. It was helpless. Kushina's reputation would be ruined if she kept on hanging out with the Uchiha girl. Kushina-chan? Holy crap. Pressing a frown and annoyance, Kushina turned to the direction where the Uchiha girl's voice rang up. Hello, Makoto-san. And hello, Itachi-kun. Hikari was the first to greet the Uchihas with graceful manner. Makoto-chan. Kushina quickly smiled at Makoto. And Itachi-kun. The Uchiha Anbu bowed at the two ladies without a word. Seems like you two were shopping? Makoto asked her best friend, a small smile hanging upon her usually pale face. It's not your concern. Pressing a rising annoyance, Kushina nodded. Yes. Are you from grocery? Oh yes. I'm going to cook udon tonight. Ka-san. Kushina nearly fell backward when a certain red-headed figure rushed into her. Kazumi-chan. How many times did I tell you not to jump around? Chiding her second with an affable tone, Kushina gave a little hop onto Kazumi's head. Hello, Kazumi-sama. Hikari greeted the girl with a smile. Hi boss-san. Ka-san, I'm hungry. Buy me a ramen. Alright. How was your academy today? Where's your Ni-chan? It was bored. Ni-chan went to Hinata-chan's house. Just then, upon noticing a tall figure standing beside them, Kazumi's childish happy expression immediately shifted into a childish scowl. Why are you here? Itachi gulped, bewildered. Hello, Kazumi-sama. Beat it. I hate you. Screamed the girl. Kazumi-chan. Kushina tried to scold, but the girl was already starting to childishly push the Uchiha Anbu away using her tiny palms. Go away, away, Kazumi-sama. Makoto's face flushed with a bewilderment. Her mouth gaped. She eyed Kushina, who also seemed quite bewildered as well. Kazumi-chan, you shouldn't push a person. It was good that there's no passerby on the street, really. Then a sudden voice interrupted the scene, causing everyone around to fall silent immediately. Yes, Namikaze Kazumi, you should not push a person. Both Kushina and Makoto froze in their places when a certain handsome blonde shunshined in front of them. Kazumi immediately stepped away from Itachi and clung to her mother, her slender shoulders starting to tremble. Hokage-sama. It seemed like Itachi and Hikari were the only ones who did not froze at the Hokage's appearance. Minato frowned little but soon made his usual grin to this strange group. Alright, ladies and Itachi-kun. What's going on here? Oh, it's nothing. Kushina quickly voiced, hoping Minato would just pass it off. By the way, where are you going? Without answering his wife's question, Minato turned to Itachi then. Itachi-kun, where are you going? Home. The Uchiha Anbu smiled a bit nervously. Do you need me to do something, Hokage-sama? Certainly. It seems like Kakashi's taking a lonely lunch. Actually, I'd offered him my company, but he refused it in first place, so. The two males both chuckled then. Let's go. Oh, by the way, the blonde abruptly turned to Makoto, causing the Uchiha woman to nearly stop her breath. So you're on your way home? Yes, Hokage-sama. Makoto quickly replied, her voice shaking and her face flushing like a tomato. Minato nodded. Alright, we'll take you home and then join my student. Now both Itachi and Makoto flushed. It's okay, Hokage-sama, I'll just take my mother home and then join you. It's okay, Hokage-sama, I can go alone. Minato blinked few times at the embarrassed two before chuckling again. Now, don't fret, it's my pleasure anyway. But Hokage-sama, our house is too humble too. What do you mean? Let's go. With a sushioning smile the Yondaime urged them. They look like a family, thought Kushina as she watched the trio walking away together. She did not realize that she was biting her lips hard until Hikari softly nudged her. Kushina-sama, what's wrong? Huh. The redhead quickly perked up, her head totally blank for a while, then she hastily put a feigned smile onto her face again. Haha, it's so hot today. I can't believe it's autumn. Hikari tilted her head little but soon smiled back. Hokage-sama is quite a gentleman. You'd never know how much of jealousies you're getting from women in our village. Then the Hyuga lady looked down at Kazumi, who'd suddenly become quiet, her head dropped. Are you okay now, Kazumi-sama? Huh. The girl flinched little. Yes. Probably Hikari just thought Kazumi hated Uchihas with the same reason the many citizens hate the family of the traders. Kushina, Kazumi and Hikari got out of the marketplace, chattering not as lively as while ago. When they were about to separate, Hikari whispered to the red-haired beauty. I know that I shouldn't say things like this, so please just pass it off. I just can't help feeling that Makoto-san has something for your husband. The sound of the door of the rooftop being opened made the silver-haired Anbu to snort. Stupid weasel, I knew that you'd be back. Kakashi-kun. A happy voice of the last person he'd expected to hear at this moment made him nearly jump up from the cloth sheet he'd been sitting on. Hey, Rin-chan. Putting his chopsticks down lazily, Kakashi made an eye smirk to the brown-haired medic Nen. What the heck was Rin doing here? Rin smiled a bit shyly for a moment then approached him, holding something wrapped in a cloth in her one hand. Sensei told me to bring another herb tea. He said he'd be here. Oh, now Kakashi understood. Well, he's not here. Maybe he'll be here soon? Guess so. With a shrug, Kakashi picked up one of the originis in his bento box and took a bite. A clumsy silence fell between the two then, causing the girl to feel helpless for a while. Kakashi noticed it as always, and again, pressed a wince. It was always like this every time they were together. And Kakashi always had to feel guilty, for he knew that he was making her sad by his callous manner. But he couldn't give her what she desired. All he felt when he confronted her was a great guilt. But that's all. And Hitaki Kakashi wasn't kind of a man who would take an advantage of his fangirl. Rin bit her own nails before opening her mouth again, in her usual affable, small tone. I wonder if Jiraiya-sama will be back on this year's festival. I can tell you, replied the Anbu boy in his usual lazy manner. Sensei said the pervert Sannin will be surely visiting on this festival. Really? Sensei said so. Darn, I hope he will bring his unpublished editions along. Rin giggled at the comment, hiding her mouth with one hand. Kakashi looked down at her and smiled quietly. Dark, onyx eye and soft brown eyes met together then. For a moment Rin thought his eyes looked sad. I wonder what his disease is. The boy abruptly muttered. Rin flinched, then blushing a little she dropped her head. Me too. Shame on me that I couldn't find it out. It's not your fault. Maybe Tsunade-sama will be able to figure it out. But we don't know where she is. Slam. The another sound of the door being opened rang up. Both Rin and Kakashi perked up, and upon noticing the spiky golden head and another dark head, Kakashi waved his hand at them. My dear friends. The Yondaime grinned, his deep blue eyes slowly getting darker. Friends? Then he gave Kakashi a punch on the head, causing latter to yelp in a funny way. Long time ago, even upon the time of the foundation of Konohagakure, Uchihas always had been a hot potato. Now there were only 4 survivors of them, clinging to their wretched lives and trying hard to prove their loyalties toward the village. To play with Uchihas, the Hokage must be joking. Pressing a scowled Danzo calmly flipped the files in his hand. The missions accomplished by Uchiha Itachi in those 4 years after the Uchiha execution arc. 30 A-ranked missions, 22 S-ranked missions, and 50 B-ranked missions. All done with excellent results. The pathetic Uchiha was working his ass off. Frowning, the old man lifted his hand and slowly touched his own bandaged eye, where late Uchiha Shisui's eye was placed underneath. It was a shitty deal that he wasn't able to collect the Uchiha's eyes. The Yondaime had strictly forbidden it upon the execution mission. What the heck was the young Hokage thinking? Heaving a sigh, Danzo then wondered if the Hokage was preserving the Sharingan eyes in some secret place. What's on the Yondaime's mind no one would know. Even a man like Danzo sometimes felt unarmored in front of the young man, whether he was frowning or grinning. The old man shook his head then, putting the disturbing thoughts away and then looking at the files again. The eyes will be mine in near future anyway, he consoled himself. Nowadays it had become a known fact that the Hokages putting too much trusts onto Uchiha Itachi. Some were even saying that the Hokage's favor toward the Uchiha boy was going beyond the limit. Danzo could see that there's some jealousy within the saying shinobis, but anyway the statement was true enough. The Hokage must be joking. None of the Uchihas deserved a single trust. Even a loyal shinobi like Uchiha Itachi didn't deserve this kind of benefits. Danzo remembered how the boy had threatened him 4 years ago, claiming his little brother's life in exchange of the information and then warning the council that he would explode the village's secret to the enemy villages if anyone lifted a finger against Sasuke. The insolent little brat. None of the council liked it when the Yondaime had rejected the massacre plan and decided to spare the 3 Uchihas for the sake of Itachi. And now it's getting worse. The Hokage was being naive, to favor the Uchiha boy that much. He didn't mind the 2 Uchiha hookers that much. What's big deal was the brothers. They needed to be trampled quickly before they bloom. Danzo had been concocting his own plan for those 4 years, and now it was time to put it into an action. And to carry the mission out in success there needed an outstanding trapper, who both got brain and power. With a cruel smile hanging upon the end of his lips, the old man turned to Hyo and then ordered him to summon Naruto. He was staring at the burning candle, watching the slim figure slowly melting away. After waiting until the flame completely died, he stripped his wet shirt and then changed into his usual dark uniform. The village festival was coming close. To the people even shinobis outside it'd be a happy enjoyable day. But to the root members the day was nothing more than a troublesome day where spies disguised as civilians could sneak into the village easily. Especially for this year Danzo had ordered his subordinates to keep their guards even more tightly. There was a rumor which said there'd been a broken talk between the Yondaime and the leader of Kumogakure. The Hokage's ANBUs protected the village under the light, and the root members eliminated the village's enemies in a shadow. Each faction was doing its own tasks, all in one purpose. Protect the leaf. He noticed gazes from his fellow members as he slammed the door open and then paced down the dark yard, passing the training ground. There even were little fledglings who hadn't done root regulation yet, staring at the blonde with their eyes full of admiration. Not a surprise. The blonde was quite famous among his fellows. once being the youngest member in the legendary Uchiha execution mission. Then he'd achieved 34 A-ranked mission and 14 S-ranked missions afterward, causing their leader to smug with a satisfaction. Though he's only 10 years old, he was growing faster than the usual boys in his age that he looked almost 12 or 13 already. Despite the rather prim and pretty look his face had developed into, his body was getting more and more muscular beside his moodless, cynical attitudes. The utmost unique point in his look was that his sapphire eyes had turned into an odd. It was Torun who'd first noticed the blonde's right eye slowly turning into violet 2 years ago. Now the blonde's right eye was crimson red, with a pupil in it slowly becoming longer and thinner shaping into something like cat or fox's pupil. Including the blonde himself, everyone wondered if there'd be some kind of unknown dujutsu developed, but until now there's no big change in his dujutsu ability. Whoosh! He entered Danzu's office without making a single noise. When the old man looked at him he made a deep bow, then opened his mouth, the empty, emotionless voice resounding off the protected wall. Root Shinobi number 135, codename Naruto. I always accomplish my mission, Danzo-sama. The family sat together at breakfast table. Kushina cooked the family's favorite meal, ramen. Itadashimaru. The girls chorused in small voices. Kushina barely made a smile at them before throwing a careful glance to her husband. The blonde seemed to be bored and annoyed, as usual. He picked up his chopsticks with uninterested blue eyes and began to poke the noodles almost thoughtlessly. The atmosphere in the dining room was causing the females to be tensed. Perhaps for the girls, it would have been better if their father weren't present. His silence was deafening. It's mine. No, it's mine. Kushina perked up. Minami and Kazumi were having a quarrel in whispering tones over takoyakis. They made too many conflicts nowadays, sometimes they even exchanged blows. They were two vivid girls, both of them, while Ika the youngest, the only one with her father's golden hair was way too quiet. Mine. The tone of Minami's voice rose a bit. Then Minato finally turned to look at his daughters, his usually indifferent eyes slowly being filled with an annoyance. A tensed silence fell over the table again. Kushina quickly interfered, turning Minato's attention toward her. By the way, I just heard that Jiraiya-sama is coming on the festival day? The blonde glanced at her and frowned. How do you know that? Well, I heard it from Rin-chan, she said. Kakashi-kun told her. Minato merely made a blunt shrug and looked away, his eyes pensive with his own thoughts. Kushina pressed an urge to sigh. He could feel a metallic taste in his tongue. Then a rain of coughs burst out again. He quickly crumpled a towel into his mouth, to muffle the sound of his agonizing coughs. A sharp pain stung his neck as he gulped. Almost trembling his hands, he quickly poured herbal tea into a cup and emptied it in one shot. Ni-san? He flinched. Speedily he removed the bloody towel away and wiped his mouth with a hand. Yes. The door of the room opened and Sasuke stepped inside. Ni-san, are you okay? The younger brother's widened eyes were showing a clear concern. Itachi smiled bit sardonically. What do you mean? You. But I thought I heard you throwing up. It's nothing, little brother. So you're worried of me? The elder's tone shifted into a teasing tone at the end part. Sasuke blinked, soon to flush like a tomato. No, I mean, you. No, I mean. Alright, now I know how much you care for me. How touching. What a graceful morning. Ni-san. Blushing madly, Sasuke sprang up, jumping onto his brother. Itachi quickly grabbed his wrists, holding him in a place. Wow, and now you're trying to embrace me. But please bear it, since I don't like such enthusiastic hug from a boy. It'd have been better if you're a sister instead of. Now it seemed like Sasuke was literally steaming. Aooh. I hate you. Itachi subtly let go of Sasuke's arms. Sasuke flinched little, noticing an abrupt serious expression emerging on his brother's face. Wah, Ni-san? Sasuke. The elder's voice was grim, causing the younger to sweat drop. Wah, what? I guess we need to talk about your recent conducts. Wah. What's that? Itachi turned to see the window where Sasuke was pointing. And when he looked back again, his little brother was already getting out of the house, clutching his bag in one hand. Sasuke halted short before shutting the gate behind him and shouted, I'm going to academy, see y'all later. A silence fell into the house then. Makoto and Kyu might be still sleeping. With a sigh, Itachi sprawled onto his bed, feeling his head aching. Foolish little brother, he thought, stop messing around. Or else we'll be. Itachi knew well that his brother was playing wild nowadays, with his friend gangs such as Hyuga Neji or Rock Lee. And their parents were complaining about the Uchiha boy, claiming that he'd put some kind of bad influence upon their naive children. Naive children. A crooked smile passed across his lips. Oh, mothers. Fortunately the Hokage was being almost too generous to his family. Well, the Yondaime was quite a kind man, but his closest Anbu guards were well aware of how he would react when someone crossed a limit. And Uchiha Itachi never wanted to face the enraged Hokage. Never. The half-bloomed flowers softly crushed under his boots. The forest was damp by last night's rain. The sleeves of his garments were getting wet as he brushed against the tall, wet grass. He found Naruto there. The blonde was leaning lazily against a tree, his eyes drooping in boredom, his lashes brushing his scarred cheeks. The blonde raised his head when he noticed Sai's stare. What are you doing there? Sai broke the awkward silence with not-so-questioning tone. Without a word Naruto pointed at the few cubs of a wild fox that were playing around his folded legs. It's weird, the black-haired root boy mumbled. Yeah, it's weird, the blonde root boy approved. The cubs were now playing coquettes to the blonde, as if the human boy were their parent. Now it wasn't that surprising though. Whenever the blonde encountered Kanades, whether they're well-trained ninja dogs or wild animals, he found them always trying to get his. You're weird, Sai blurted again. Everyone would panic if they saw you now. A strange pair of the odd eyes stared at him. Why, 'cause I didn't kill these cubs? Sai blinked as he took a closer look at the blonde's eyes. One sapphire blue eye and one ruby red eye. The eyes hadn't been that weird when he'd been younger. Naruto had been with a pair of blue eyes, which were so large and shiny. Now the blonde's vibe was more like an animal's than a human's because of those odd eyes, despite his rather prim and proper face. Suddenly Naruto stood onto his feet. The cubs tried cling onto his legs, then however he bluntly gestured them to go away. Watching the babe foxes going back to the deepest part of the forest, Sai muttered. A mission? A mission. Silence fell again. The dialogue at the damp forest in early morning was the first talk between the two after the 4 years of gap. Find a way to set Uchiha Sasuke up. Danzo had ordered. Once he fall into a trap, Uchiha Itachi will naturally fall together. Don't try anything directly toward Itachi. Use his little brother. Accomplish your mission before the festival day. There were little ones in the training ground, some of them yet to undergo regulation and some were fresh newbies who'd done regulation recently. There were, of course, elder root comrades watching over them. Everyone looked at him when he appeared in a dark civilian clothes. Whispers rose among the little ones. And again, Naruto could feel their gazes, which were full of admiration and fear. So he's the so-called, wow, his eyes are. He's the favorite of our leader Sama, right? Shush. Quote, the little ones were still clumsy at treating their own emotions. Even those who'd done regulation not everyone could freeze their emotions completely just by undergoing regulation. Some of them needed to go through unbearable terrors in order to turn into a useful root member. So the old root members often used violent means for any idiotic actions of the newbies. Hyo approached to Naruto then, his tall figure covering the sunlight as he strode closer toward him. A mission? Naruto nodded. A mission. So we'll have to hold regulation without you. Guess so. What the blonde turned around as he felt an abrupt thud upon his back. So sorry. A little boy with a brown hair quickly apologized, shaking. Naruto blinked. Before he could take any action, the little boy was already flying a good 20 meters across the field, soon to hit the ground with a thud and wriggle with a pain in his stomach which had been kicked by Hyo. A short scream burst out among the kids. Hyo strode to the trembling boy and then lifted him by scruff. It hurts, huh? He asked in his usual cold, calm tone. The pathetic boy nodded helplessly, still trembling. Yes. It's because of your fear. Hyo pressed. Not because you stupidly ran into him. You're punished because you've expressed your fear. He roughly let go of the boy, then motioned his other comrades to take him away. A tensed, frozen silence fell upon the training field. Naruto threw a glance to the little ones that were watching the scene with horrified eyes. How many of them were going to survive in this year? Half? Or quarter? Get back to training, the blonde voiced dryly. Slowly the training ground began to be filled with noises again. Naruto shrugged to Hyo. Alright, that was strong. I'll be on a mission till festival day. Hyo sent a nod to the blonde. We'll be holding regulation for those underlings tomorrow. Naruto pulled out his 2 kunais and then plucked one into the stony ground while handing the other one to Hyo. Come to notify me if anything happens. The blonde reminded. Then we'll be immediately back here. Hyo nodded, his dull dark eyes shining little against the bright sunlight. Though I don't expect any chance to use this. Naruto agreed. Recently so many troubles were occurring while holding route regulation last year. Some of the horrified little ones even had tried to run away, gone so far to attack route guards. They'd been slaughtered immediately, of course. Yet such happening was troublesome. His eyes shone with a strange gleaming as he stared. The afternoon sky was as blue as his left eye, the sun was as shiny as his hair, and yet his aura was turning darker and darker as he watched the Sasuke, stop right now. The blonde root was sitting on a tall tree, hiding behind branches and controlling his chakra. His eyes were fixed on the grand green field in front of him, or to be more exact, on the figures that were roaming in the field. They were laughing. They looked perfectly joyful, at least for now. Sons of the traitor were enjoying themselves with their lives. Naruto didn't like it. I said stop, little brother. An Anbu with pony-tailed black hair was dashing around in the field, chasing a younger boy who was giggling cheekily at him holding a certain scroll in one hand. A frown began to spread upon Naruto's face. The phrase, little brother, was causing him to burn into a certain memory. Soon, Itachi caught Sasuke, holding him within his arms and lightly knocking the boy's head with a fist, smiling when he grumbled, pouted and giggled. Naruto wasn't even sparing a glance at Sasuke. Though the boy was to be his direct prey, he was completely out of his interest. He was watching the Uchiha Anbu instead, not looking away even when his head began to ache at the certain, long-forgotten memories. You naughty little brother, stop messing around now, okay? Hokage-sama will be here soon to see us, so be as good as. Alright. I'll be as polite as you to him, don't worry. Sasuke escaped from his brother's arms and smiled cheekily all the while, Onyx's eyes filled with such affection for his elder brother. Naruto's eyes narrowed. That Sasuke boy seemed different with that of what he'd heard. He knew well of the reputation of the younger Uchiha boy in the village. However, it seemed like the boy became a quite different person when he's with his elder brother. And the elder one was different as well. His eyes unwavering, Naruto then turned his gaze to the red-haired figure in a distance, which was standing leaning against a railing of a balcony on the Hokage's tower, obviously watching the Uchiha brothers secretly too. The wife of the Hokage _ the girl from Whirlpool, who'd been a former vessel of Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto tilted his head little when he recognized Danzu's figure coming out from the door of the Hokage's office, which was soon accosted by the redhead. They shared greetings, formal inquiries, and the blonde tilted his head again. What the hell was the woman doing? The wife of the Hokage was obviously trying to make a talk with Danzo. However, soon Naruto looked away with uninterested eyes and stood straighter. Hey little brother. It was enough. It was enough for him to disdain Uchiha Itachi now. The Uchiha was reminding him of Shin. Idiots. As the red-haired girl screamed, roughly throwing the 6th kimono, the shopkeeper pressed his temple with a hand and sighed. I don't like any of these stupid garments. I'll go to other shop. Minami-sama, our shop is the best one among the kimono shops. Shut up, liar. The violet eyes of the heroine of Konoha burned. The upcoming festival is for my birthday, and I can't wear such stupid, plain clothes, you old. Just then another young girl's fierce voice interrupted the princess of Konoha. Shut up, knucklehead. Look for other shop immediately then. Minami blinked twice at this sudden attack. Then, upon recognizing the other girl's pink hair and green eyes, she smiled sarcastically. Hey, Haruno Sakura. Sakura crossed her arms and glared at Minami, her green eyes full of contempt. Beat it, you stuck-up knucklehead. Don't you dare yell at my dad. You beat it, Sasuke's slut. I have my right to scream whenever I want. Sakura's face flushed. You're not our superior, you stuck-up whore. I am, and if you call me names one more time I'll tell my father to cut your tongue. I know that Hokage-sama won't ever do such idiotic thing, the pinkette sneered. I heard that he actually spanked you when you fought with Sasuke-kun. This time Minami's face flushed with rage. Wah! What idiot said that? And no matter how much you drool for the Uchiha jerk, you're just his slut. Bah, your sister Kazumi told me. And you're a stuck-up whore who can suck it. Now the two girls started to shower inaudible curses to each other, causing the small shop to vibrate with the high-tuned screams. The poor shopkeeper and the servantess of Minami began to sweat drop as they helplessly watched the girls' nasty quarrels. Suddenly a grunt, rather comical voice interrupted the scene. Well, as I'd always emphasized, girls are so scary when they're pissed. The shopkeeper gaped his mouth as he looked at the old man's weird white hair and the almost unbearably fashioned outfits. Minami and Sakura stopped quarreling momentarily and stared up at the stranger. Who are you? Snapped Minami. The old man pointed himself, smiling in a comical way. Who am I? I'm the author of the bestseller nowadays, as well as being the greatest Sannin. She was staring at the view of the village under her feet. What would happen if she just jumped down, without chakra to resist against the falling? What would happen if she just fall? Would she break into pieces? She sniffled, wiping her tears with a hand. She knew that her father would scold her if he saw her now. You are so weak, he would say. It was true, she was weak. However, she wasn't so gloomy now just because of her father's cold treatment onto her. She'd been so used to it already. Neji's bullies on her were getting more and more cruel nowadays. Today he had even kicked her in front of the other boys in their classroom during lunchtime. Though she knew well that Neji hated her so much because he thought the cause of his father's death was her. Neji was becoming even more sadistic nowadays, and did not stop causing chaos everywhere in the village with Uchiha Sasuke. The two boys had a lot in common, anyway. They both lost their fathers unexpectedly. They both had such rebellious souls. They both were like wildfire. But Hinata couldn't tell all of these to her father, for he would only blame her of being so weak. And even if the clan council would punish Neji, she wouldn't be happy with it. Fall, or not fall, how would her father and Neji react when they saw her dead? Would they still look her down with disdainful eyes? Or, she closed her eyes. Slowly, she stretched one leg, stepping out of the edge of the rooftop. Hey, Hyuga Hinata opened her eyes, feeling herself unable to move an inch forward, the belt around her waist obviously clutched by certain fingers from the back. Blinking quizzically, she cocked her head upward to see the intruder. Her breath froze momentarily when she found herself facing a pair of strange odd eyes. Uchiha Itachi and Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Neji. Festival Day and guards against Kumo spies. Naruto needed this Hyuga heiress in order to accomplish his mission. Wearied fingers rose to poke the side of her forehead, her eyes rapidly scanning the clipboard she was holding. She closed her eyes, trying to get rid of the dull throb on her temple. She really needed to sleep, but she still had much left to do. I'll just take a 5-minute rest, she announced to the nurses and headed to the lounge. Once she arrived, she took a seat on a chair beside the large window. It was a cool autumn afternoon. Konoha was beautiful, with multicolored leaves, and the relative tranquility surrounded its inhabitants. Large, soft brown eyes briefly twinkled with hope, only to be filled with sadness moments later. She was aware that she was sometimes too sentimental, which had often caused both Kakashi and Minato to berate her for it. Maybe that's why I can never be the type of girl who suits him. Feeling even gloomier, she stared up at the once blue sky, which was slowly turning crimson. Tears began to befill her eyes. When she was in that particular sort of mood, the memory of a specific toddler always burst in her mind. It also happened every time she came across playful, young boys. Naruto. He may be in their age now. Ever since the day Danzo had taken Naruto, neither Minato nor Rin had spoken a word about it to each other. Minato was quite a busy man, what with him being a Hokage, and Rin hadn't dared to talk a word about it. Although frankly, she sometimes felt angry at him for abandoning his son in that way. Sometimes, it pained her when she saw Namikaze girls together with their parents. The thoughts of the blonde babe constantly hounded her. Even though she didn't exactly know about Danzu's route, she was well aware that the boy would be. Look, it's Kakashi-san. Rin quickly whirled around, the whispers coming from the admiring bordering on sycophantic nurses alerting her of her teammate's presence. Startled brown eyes widened for few seconds, soon to be filled with a sweet joy. Kakashi-kun. Hey, Rin. The silver-haired Anbu waved a hand at her, while tugging the other hand into his pocket. Rin gulped. Kakashi didn't seem to be wounded or sick. Why would he be there, then? Was he there to see someone? Was it a girl? Got out of work now? Lifting his silver eyebrow, the Anbu strode inside the lounge, his voice as lazy as usual. A slow smile lit up Rin's face at the question. Kakashi never tried to start a conversation with her, and therefore that type of question was a very rare occurrence. Frankly, no. But, well, sadly, you should be getting out of work right now. Her brown eyes were filled with confusion. Huh? Yeah, the perverted Sanin is here, and he wants to meet us after. It's been such a long time, after all. She jumped down from the chair she'd been sitting on. Jiraiya-sama is here? Kakashi lifted his hand and ruffled his own hair. Silver strands parted wildly between gloved fingers as he took the seat she had just left. He barged into Sensei's office just a while ago. He did confess that he'd already been in the village since last week, busily peeping at the public bathhouses and just about everywhere young ladies can be found. Rin tried to force back giggles, but she was already laughing. Oh, he hasn't changed a bit. A sudden silence fell. Noticing an abrupt seriousness that fell upon the Anbu's aura, Rin carefully asked. Kakashi-kun? The Anbu responded with a lazy, pensive voice, his visible eye blankly staring at the outside of window. Is there something wrong? The silver eyebrows twitched a little. What do you mean? I mean, her face flushed with embarrassment. You just seem to have something on your mind. Kakashi sighed. Frankly, he really felt tired whenever Rin acted like that, when she kept on studying his countenance and worrying about things she hadn't actually done. Such actions made him feel guilty again and again. And Hitaki Kakashi was so sick of feeling guilty. He took a deep breath. I'm just thinking about how the pervert Sanin will react once he finds out our sensei's neglecting attitude towards his own children. Rin blinked at that. A sudden realization hit her head, causing her slender body to tremble as the thrill of fear penetrated her brain. Okami-sama. Jiraiya-sama will notice the flaw in Minami. He'll notice the absence of the Biju's power once he examines her. He'll find out. Oh my, is Sensei ready for that? However, not noticing the horror that had risen on her face, Kakashi continued. Well, Sensei is guilty. I mean, it's wrong to neglect your own children, but in some ways I do understand him. He sighed again. Now, I'm not sure if Minami-chan is the right vessel for the Biju's power. She's too lively, loud, and fiery, but not strong. She can't even control her own emotions, in my opinion. Rin could not believe what she was hearing. She'd never heard Kakashi speaking his own views that frankly. And he was talking to her. She was on cloud 9. To be honest, it's not even getting all the benefits anyway. He just gave up on training them. And the training, it's Kushina-sama's job actually, her being a former vessel. I don't understand why she hates him so much. Rin couldn't help but be taken aback. Hate him? Kushina-sama hates Sensei? You can see it clearly. Sensei's fault is, well, all he wanted was a son. That's all. The Anbu smiled bit sardonically. If one of the Namikaze girls had been a boy instead, things would have been very different. It would have been more fun for Hitaki Kakashi too. He could have spent a lot of time with his sensei's son, training him and playing boys' stuff with him. No. Kushina-sama doesn't hate her husband. Rin gulped. It's not a hatred. She worshipped him, just like so many other ladies. And she still loves him. She then remembered their wedding day. Kushina had been as beautiful as a goddess, with a happy smile upon her matured face, while Minato had been. Well, a lot of women had sobbed on that day. It's Sensei who's done wrong. He had another relationship, whether a mistake or not, and gave his illegitimate son off to a man like Danzo. I wonder how Kushina-sama will react if she ever finds out. What with marriage and children, anyway? Darn, I'll never get married. Then yawning Kakashi stood straight. All right, let's go. Sensei has a son. Rin blurted thoughtlessly, busy as she was in her own contemplation and almost forgot the fact that she was with Kakashi. Even though he's away, they'll have a chance to meet again. Kakashi turned to her. What? Realizing her blunder, Rin began to flush again. Nothing. What do you mean, nothing? A coal eye narrowed dangerously at her. You've just said something quite nonsensical to me. Nothing. I was just. Smiling helplessly, Rin took a small step backward, inwardly scolding herself. I was just confused and The silver-haired Anbu stepped towards her, his cold onyx eye fixed on her. You were confused? His voice had lost of its previous traces of laziness. Instead, it was dry and stern. Rin gulped again, her hands starting to shake, tears starting to pool in her eyes. I just wish I hadn't been involved with that matter at all. I want to forget how the baby cried that night, how he slept peacefully in my arms, how he giggled when his father tickled him, and how he screamed when Kyuubi's chakra was sealed into him. How he looked at me for the last time before Danzo-san took him away. Sadness that had been caused. Her hands tensed tightly, painfully gripping, tearing, clawing at each other. Suddenly, a rough, gloved hand forcefully gripped her wrist. She gasped, then glanced at his eyes, surprised. Stop it. Confused, startled. Huh? You? Kakashi's visible eye narrowed again. Unknown to her, his feelings of guilt were shifting into fury. Images flashed through his mind, even the images he had been trying so hard to forget. White Fang, Obito, Shisui, the Uchihas. Slowly, the Anbu released her arm. Neither noticed the red finger marks he had left on the fragile wrist. You make me feel miserable, he blurted. Her jaw fell open, stunned. What? His eye was shining with a strange light, Rin noticed, as Kakashi stared down at her for a long while before turning away. Kakashi-kun, Rina was barely able to mumble. Let's go, he muttered crossly, striding ahead. They're waiting. With teary eyes, Rin followed him, desperate and with an aching heart. I know that I don't deserve you, but please don't tell me that I'm hurting you. During the past years, Danzo had never spared the wife of Yondaime an ounce of interest. The woman was from Uzumaki clan, had been a vessel of Kyuubi no Kitsune, a fact that Minato had tried very hard to conceal before their marriage. Currently, though, there was no reason to hide it anymore. However, when Danzo had found out, even when it was still a major secret, it still hadn't interested him that much. The holder of the Biju's power was now his man. Although Naruto was still a young boy, the level of his power was growing at a steady pace. Danzo hadn't been that surprised when Naruto's eyes had turned into an odd. The changed crimson eye was obviously due to the Biju's influence. There's nothing you can do, really. Just let him concentrate on training as much as possible. That's the only way to ease his pain. When he's grown up, he'll either be able to control his power or the power will control him. It depends on the strength of his very own soul. The voice of Shino seemed to whisper into his ear. Danzo's lips curled. In any case, the Biju was in his hands, so those Namikaze girls did not interest him at all. But why had Kushina asked him to visit her house? The old man's eyebrows twitched. When the council meeting was over and he proceeded to exit the Hokage's office, he had spotted her there, obviously waiting for someone. Waiting for him. What was her purpose? What did she want from him? I can pay her a visit later. Having arrived at his office, Danzo immediately headed to his desk and took a seat, shrugging the thoughts off. He had a lot of things to do. The festival was just days ahead and he had to keep guards out for Kumo's spies, and also he needed to monitor Naruto to check whether he was adequately carrying out the mission he had been given. Naruto. The old man frowned in sudden annoyance when he noticed a certain kunai placed on his desk. The only problem with the boy was that he resembled his biological father too much. People like Sarutobi or Jiraiya would immediately be reminded of Minato's early years if they saw him. Apart from the looks, some of the techniques Naruto had developed were similar to Minato's. It could be regarded as one of those bloodline limits. But did Minato have a bloodline? Especially the unique space-time jutsu. Minato was quite famous with that technique, and Naruto could already perform a similar jutsu, although the range was shorter. Danzo just couldn't figure out how the hell the boy had managed to develop the jutsu. The difference between the two was that Naruto implemented a seal onto kunai itself. He then plucked it into any spot he needed to get back. I don't know how I did it. I just did it. It was as if I have always known how to. The boy had pleaded when he'd been interrogated for the jutsu issue. Danzo rubbed his chin. The jutsu was useful, that was true, until someone noticed the resemblance between the two. Damn, when he'd taken Naruto 10 years ago he hadn't expected that kind of problem. The resemblance between the father and the son. Bastards. Even though 10 years had passed, Danzo still hadn't realized that not an hour was passing for him without thinking of Naruto. Her heart was bumping wildly with excitement. She had never felt so excited. She had never felt the urge to laugh as boisterously as she did at that moment. Yes, she was smiling so uncharacteristically much that her mother had come to ask whether she had been praised by her father. It's not because of such a trifle thing, she wanted to say. Thinking of only one thing, she finished her shower and put on yutaka, her pupil-less white eyes dreamy in reminiscence. Tell me why you're so miserable, the boy said to her softly. His spiky hair was as golden as sunlight and his eyes were red and blue, which made him have a rather dangerous aura despite his prim and calm face. She gathered her knees within her arms and sniffled. This guy had stopped her from jumping down and breaking into pieces. The boy sat beside her, perked on the railing, and then stared at her. You're a heiress of Hyuga clan, aren't you? Yes. Then, possessed by a sudden thought, she abruptly clung onto him. Please don't tell my father about it. He'll be so disappointed in. The boy blinked. Slowly, he held the wrists that were grabbing his sleeves hard. Don't worry. So are you going to tell me why you tried to kill yourself? She blushed as she felt his fingers around her wrists, and sniffled again. She was beyond miserable, for there was no one that would lend her an understanding ear and listen to her pain. Not her family, not her classmates, not her servants. She felt so lonely. But this guy. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. The boy curled his lips. The smile was cold and clipped, almost derisive. However, it was strangely attractive. I'm a secret Anbu of Yondaime-sama. Hinata's eyes widened in amazement. You're an Anbu? The boy who looked only around 13 nodded. Yes. And you know, I'm 10, just like you. It's good to meet someone my age. It's fun. Whoa wow. Hinata looked down at her hands, held them together and then clawed them. Silence momentarily fell upon them, and she slid her gaze to look at him once again. He's so pretty, she thought as she stared at his thoughtful profile against the twilight. He's even prettier than Sasuke. You don't have to kill yourself, he suddenly muttered. Huh? You don't have to kill yourself if you want to die so badly. Strange red and blue eyes gazed at her, compassion in them. You'll die soon, of natural causes. Startled and horrified white eyes stared up at him. What? All you have to do is to wait, if you want to die so badly. Wait. Why will I die? Because you're once again being targeted by Kumo ninja. The blonde smiled again, that derisive, attractive smile. Hinata's mouth dropped in pure horror. But they have already taken my uncle's body. His Byakugan was useless upon his death. The leaders of Kumo are seeking revenge. He squeezed her hand with his own large one as if to comfort her. That's why I'm here. I'm here to request you protect yourself. Her eyes were teary with fear. The Hyuga heiress gulped. How? Don't tell anyone yet, he ordered. There's a spy among your midst. We don't know who the culprit is, so be silent and act as usual. Oh okay. She nodded like a good girl replying to her older brother. And? Always keep this one with you. Nonchalantly the blonde pulled out a kunai from his chest and handed it to her. Hinata blinked. The kunai looked like an ordinary one, but was made of silver and had a symbol of Kumo engraved into its shaft. Kumo kunai? Sparkling red eyes shone. Anyone around you with same kind of kunai is the culprit. She placed her palms on her reddened cheeks. Strangely, she wasn't afraid anymore. She was thinking of the blonde instead, and she couldn't stop the blush. His eyes were like jewels and his hair was as magnificent as real gold. Will I see you again? She had asked. Soon. The blonde had smiled at her before vanishing away. Why didn't I ask his name at least? Feeling a strong impulse to slap herself, Hinata buried her face in her pillow. Wahahahaha. How amazing, to see the generations I left behind have grown into men. Tell me boy, are you still a virgin? Yes. Sensei, don't throw a such filthy question at my naive subordinate. What's there to blush about between us men? Kakashi, do something. Don't make me do something you can't do, sensei. Oh yeah, my fan. How about you? You should teach your friend how to be a real man. Wahahahaha. Please, we're with Rin. Oh. It was only then they realized they were in the presence of a woman, and Jiraiya let out a laugh that resembled that of a mating elephant's, then let go of poor Uchiha Anbu's shoulder. Minato rested his arm against the wall and began to chuckle as well. Only Rin and Itachi kept quite embarrassed looks, both of their faces flushed like tomatoes at the perverted jokes coming from the perverted Sannin. My apologies, Minato could barely utter his apologies at the Uchiha Anbu, laughing as he still was. Itachi blushed again. It's okay, Hokage-sama. Look, you're blushing like a girl. You should know how to be a man, boy. Let me help you to become a real man before I. Sensei, you're embarrassing the poor boy. Watching the two men laughing helplessly, Hitaki Kakashi smiled. He hadn't seen Minato-sensei laughing so cheerfully in the past 10 years. And you've become prettier. The perverted Sannin gleefully rubbed his hands together while his gaze was fixed on Rin. Rin blushed madly, and when she noticed Kakashi's staring, she began to fume. Have you met Kushina-sama already? Kakashi then asked the Sannin. Of course, I met your girls too, Mina-kun. Jiraiya laughed again, pointing a finger at the Hokage. I've seen all of them. So adorable, all of them. I'm looking forward to seeing them when they hit puberty. The Yondaime's sapphire eyes suddenly widened. Sensei, are you telling me that you're pervying on my daughters? Oh, of course not. I'm just praising them. You incorrigible filthy perver. So he's the one who wrote the strange orange book you are always reading? Itachi asked Kakashi. Kakashi could only chuckle in response. All right. Who's gonna have a drink tonight to celebrate this fantastic day? The day this handsome, powerful ladies man has come back. Jiraiya-sama. I guess you're talking about my sensei, but he's been in this village for all these years and has never left. Kakashi, how can you betray me like this? I thought you were my fan. Your book's fan, not your fan. The silver-haired Anbu yawned. Then Minato, who'd finally found some control over his laughter, rubbed his face with one of his hands and cleared his throat. Okay, I'm up for a drink. Yo, Kakashi thumbed up. Sake battle once again? Minato grinned. So you do remember. Of course, you two were quite fantastic. At least to me, since I was only 12 back then. This time you'll join, too. Without bet? What, you wanna bet? Cool. So far away. They feel all so far away. Of course, you can never be one of them, son of the traitor. Itachi literally flinched when Jiraiya suddenly turned and grabbed his hand, holding it between his own rough and large yet warm hands. It was good to see you, boy. The Sannin grinned heartily. I knew your father. I feel sorry for your loss. Startled gray eyes shook for a moment, staring back at the gently smiling Sannin. He lowered his gaze, downcast. Thank you. So let me make a man out of you. Alright, Mina and Kaka. I'll see ya tonight at 9 for sake battle. Yee. And you too, come with me. Laughing like a lunatic, the perverted Sannin then walked out of the office, his arms over Itachi and Rin's shoulders, literally dragging the two away with him. Minato went to sit in front of his desk, still giggling. Man, he hasn't changed a bit. Yeah, and upon seeing him, Kakashi winked at his sensei. I suddenly miss Tsunade-sama. What, are you sure? Tell me, my dear boy. Folding his hands together and his eyes twinkling playfully, the Yondaime asked. Why are you suddenly being suicidal? Kakashi blinked, chuckled a little, and then grabbed a chair and sat in front of him. The chuckle soon subsided as his eyes started to glaze with something like a bitter smile. Minato tilted his head at this. Is there really something on your mind? What is it? Tell me about your troubles. But don't tell me it's something like you've actually fallen in love with the slug princess. Kakashi chuckled again. Sometimes, the Hokage seemed like a young boy. Sensei, I'd rather die than be hugged by the horrible lady. I'm relieved. But then what's your problem? Actually, it's about Rin. Ruffling his silver hair, Kakashi sighed. Minato blinked, then a smile spread upon his face. Oh, and how so? You know that she has fancied me for quite some time, right? Of course. That's why Obito always tried to pick a fight with you. The two chuckled together at those old memories. Well, the Anbu continued, staring up at the wooden ceiling rather thoughtfully. She still idolizes me. Do you understand, sensei? I know very well that her happiness depends on me, but I can't give her what she wants. He sighed again. I'm a bastard. I know it. I tried to abandon her, and Obito died because of that. He made me promise to protect Rin, and here I am, feeling so uncomfortable every time I'm with her. The Yondaime's deep blue eyes shone at his student. You know, Kakashi-kun, I can understand how it is. You do? Yeah, you get a shitty deal when someone idolizes you, even if it may come from your own family. The blonde smiled. Fans only see their ideal figure in you and expect you to act as they wish. It's different with love or adoring. Once you disappoint them, they'll start hating you. Sometimes, they lower themselves to carrying out really silly things in order to catch your attention. Kakashi rubbed his masked chin. Man, she's already in that state. Oh? Yeah, she started blurting nonsense and some other absurd things to me. Do you know what she actually said a while ago when I went to pick her up? No. What happened? We happened to be talking about your family. The Anbu rolled his eye a bit nervously as the Hokage's golden eyebrows began to twitch. Ahem, we were talking about your daughters, and that should have been the end of it. But she suddenly started talking about something that sounded like, you have a son. The Hokage blinked. In a moment, thoughts cascaded through his mind like a raging waterfall. The effect of the words on him was electric. It was as if he'd forgotten how to breathe, as if his very blood had run cold. Slowly, he blinked again. And the raging fire flamed in his blue eyes. However, Kakashi was still staring at the ceiling, and did not notice the sadistic rage that began to burn in the blonde's eyes. I dunno, it was as if she were trying to say that you have a son, behaving like your subordinates. The Anbu continued, totally unaware of the effect his words were having on his sensei. But she made the sentence very absurd and twisted. It nearly sounded like you have a hidden child. He then giggled once again. I've never heard her speaking in a such weird way before. I'm getting a bit worried, maybe she's too tired nowadays. The Hokage spoke mildly, his once burning sapphire eyes now ice cold. And also, she might have been trying to get your attention by speaking in an abnormal way, to look stressed or whatever. You think so, too? Yeah, it's obvious. The Yondaime grinned widely. Maybe you should be kinder to her? Sensei, tell me frankly, Kakashi. Are you sure that Rin isn't your type? I wonder if there would be any girl. Then the Anbu suddenly made an evil eye smirk at his teacher. Well, I think I can wait until your daughters grow. Huh, mind saying that again? Joke. I was just joking. I'll see you later. A wave from a gloved hand, a wink, and Hitaki Kakashi vanished. The Yondaime stretched his long arms and opened his drawer. A vein throbbed in his forehead as his smile slowly vanished, a cold frown taking its place instead. He found them in the drawer. Sandaime had loved smoking from his pipe, but Yondaime never liked the pipe. He held the end of cigar with his lips and then lit it with a match. He avoided smoking in public, but he liked to burn 2 or 3 cigars when he was alone. Amongst the white smoke, his cold blue eyes shone, 1,000 thoughts and burning rage flooded his mind. That damn nausea again. Now it was almost like a congenital disease. He needed to get back to training at once. Damn. Breathing heavily, the blonde finally stopped throwing up and then wiped his mouth, his palm against a wall. He leaned on it to catch his breath. His head felt strangely light. He stared at the view with blank eyes. All the buildings and the streets were glowing crimson at twilight, but they weren't as red as his right eye. People were everywhere. The village festival was just days ahead. All the shops and stores were blooming with smiling people and their families, friends and lovers. Naruto never understood the act of smiling. He was through with smile practice, which every rookie root member had to undergo, so he knew how to move his facial muscles in order to smile, but he couldn't understand it. Although, he did remember that Shin had always smiled. He closed his eyes for a while. He never liked it when he was reminded of Shin. He'd been steadily forgetting the idiot, however, now the image of the grinning fool was pestering him again. It was all because of Uchiha Itachi. He'll be finished soon. Anyone who'd been caught in Danzu's radar had never lasted long. The Uchiha would have miserable end, too. Naruto's plan seemed to be going well. The Hyuga heiress had seemed to be utterly enamored with him. It wasn't surprising though, since he already had experience with that kind of girls, and even adult women during some missions. Most of them had been willing to strike a deal with him. Although Naruto always felt strangely uncomfortable every time he had to deal with them. Their scents, their cheerful giggles, blushes, and those beaming eyes made him feel so uncomfortable. He couldn't understand why, he just felt so. Maybe because he wasn't used to girls? After all, Root did not have a single kunoichi among its 100 members. Or maybe it could be because of the Uchiha. Every time he faced a girl, he was reminded of screams that still echoed in his ears, the screams from the dead Uchiha girls that had been slaughtered by him 4 years ago. He was well aware that it could be the one weak spot that could prove to be fatal, but he just couldn't stop feeling bothered by them. He felt nothing at the boys' screams, but the girls' screams were strangely unbearable for him. Fortunately, until now, none of the Root comrades knew of the admired blonde's secret trauma. "Excuse me, are you okay?" "What?" The blonde whirled around, only to face a girl with ponytailed blonde hair who was staring at him with twinkling eyes. "What?" Naruto muttered bluntly. The girl's eyes twinkled again. "I just saw you dry heaving, are you okay? Do you need help?" Naruto gulped, suddenly alarmed. He knew that look. He knew those twinkles. It would be troublesome. "Gimme a second, okay?" The girl then turned, ran to the opposite side of the street where 5 or 6 other girls were hanging around. She then whispered something to them. Soon, they all turned their colorful heads and looked at him. They all burst into screams. "Kawaii, look at his eyes. He's so pretty, fantastic. Who is he?" Naruto gulped again, starting to feel insecure as he watched the girls swarming toward him, all of their eyes twinkling. Cold sweat emanated from his forehead. Almost instinctively, he took a small step backwards. They were scary. So Naruto, the Root shinobi, the favorite of Danzo and also the center of admiration among his comrades, turned on his heels and began to run away. It was almost midnight as they made their way through Konoha's dark, silent forest. The nightly wind was their only companion, gliding beside them silently, rustling the leaves. Some windows still glowed, but little by little, even those were extinguished. The cool wind helped her ease her headache. Humming, she brushed her red hair, tightly holding Aika's hand in one of her own. "Ka-san, is this moonflower?" Kazumi voiced a few meters away, inspecting blossoms on the forest ground. Kushina smiled. It was a beautiful night. The wind was cool, the sky was starry, and most of all, Jiraiya was in the village. At last, once the Sannin inspected Minami, she'd know what was wrong with her eldest. And then, once Danzo visited her. "Ka-san, isn't she Uchiha-san?" Aika shook her arm gently, pointing her tiny finger at 3 certain figures that were coming out from the deepest part of the forest. Kushina blinked. It took her no time to recognize the 2 Uchiha women, Makoto and Kyu, and then another figure, which was obviously an Uchiha Anbo. It seemed like the Uchihas had recognized them as well. "Kushina-chan." It was Makoto who approached them first, her face flushed by cool night wind and her arms holding a basket full of chestnuts. "Kushina-sama." Kyu bowed at her politely. Kushina threw a glance at the Uchiha Anbo. The boy gave her a polite bow and kept silence, his gray eyes mysteriously thoughtful as usual. "Hey." Kushina looked back at Makoto and smiled, feeling her own facial muscles tightening. "You were gathering chestnuts there?" "Yes. There are plenty, and it's actually more fun than it seems." Makoto giggled then. Her dark eyes shone brightly as she smiled, causing her to look almost half her age. "I know that I shouldn't say something like this, so please just ignore it. I just can't help but feel that Makoto-san has something for your husband." The careful advice from Hyuga Hikari rang up in the redhead's mind once again. At first, Kushina had just waved it off, regarding it as absolute nonsense. However, as she had kept musing over those words, she had slowly become suspicious, especially considering that Minato treated the Uchiha brothers with absolute favoritism. Rage boiled inside of her. How dare she? Even when they had been in their teens, Minato had never given the Uchiha girl the smallest bit of interest. Although to be fair, Makoto had always been with Fugaku, just like Kushina had always been with Minato. Girls like Uchiha Makoto or even Hyuga Hikari weren't Minato's type, even though they were also well-known beauties. The blonde preferred more luxurious type. Girls like fully bloomed roses, with vivid hair colors and exotic looks. And that's me. Kushina bit her lip hard. Or had she been wrong about it all along? "Come on, Aika." Kazumi grabbed her blonde sister's hand and moved away from them, heading in the direction of Namikaze Mansion. Watching the 2 little girls' figures moving away, Kushina nervously smiled at the Uchiha. "You should be careful," she spoke again, getting their attention. "My husband told me there's a warning against Kumo spies nowadays. Going into deepest part of forest at this time is dangerous." Makoto smiled again in response, and then turned to gaze at Itachi, her eyes filled with the tender love of mother. "It's okay. My son will protect me. What are you going to do if your son is torn to shreds?" Kushina couldn't help it and burst into hysterical laughter. Dark eyes stared at the red-haired woman in curiosity. What is so funny, Kushina-chan? Makoto asked without any venom in her voice. You'll know it, Kushina replied, giggling like a little girl. You'll know it soon, dear.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.